Hello and welcome to GeekVerse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the GeekVerse Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Hartcaster, Dylan Muss, and I have with me, you have a nickname, but I'm going to scrap that. I'm going to say the world champion of GeekVerse Gauntlet.
Yes.
Kirklin Patzer, also the protector. You could say you're protecting the Gauntlet belt.
Forever.
Whatever you want to say. Welcome back. We're all hot off the heels of the 24-hour stream. I know I'm still, getting back into the swing of things, still catching up on my sleep, but welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I feel very well rested after a very nice, fun, I would say successful charity stream that we did. And I think I only slept like half an hour to an hour yesterday. Like I did have a nap during the stream, so that helped for sure. But it allowed me to go to bed at like 8 or 8:30.
We did not let you have a peaceful sleep.
It was like 15-minute increments, but I probably got like 5 of those or something, which,
we'd be we'd be looking back, Mario Party, and it's like, it's your turn, and you'd be like, huh, what? And you jump back into consciousness for a bit.
Absolutely. So that allowed me to go to bed like 8 or 8:30 or something like that last night. Oh, my camera little dropped there. I'll fix that when I throw it back to you. But so I slept very well last night, and I felt really good today. I didn't have school or anything, so it was just a nice rest day. And like I said, it was nice having Shay home. So yeah, it's just been a nice little Monday.
Cool. Yeah, I after, because I didn't sleep at all on the stream. Me and Taylor were able to keep our eyes open the whole time. So my eyes were feeling pretty glazed over. But when I got home, I was able to get a couple hours sleep. But then I had to get up, get on a bus, come back home. And then unfortunately I had to go into the office today. So I was like, oh man, I just want to stay at home today, even if I'm working, just sit at home. But didn't get to do that. But I'm feeling good now. Nice and refreshed. And man, it was so much fun to just play video games for almost 24 hours straight with you guys, do some commentary, all that good stuff. So if anyone missed that, go back, check out I think that it would probably be split into 3 VODs because we had some technical difficulties and we split it up again to get the 12-hour thing. So go back and check some of that stuff out. But yeah, Kirkland popped off in the Gauntlet, of course. That was a good send-off there. Really fun matches all around. And yeah, thank you everyone who stopped by, just said anything, played some Jackbox with some fans as well. It was a really great time, but let's get into side quests for the day. Today we're going to be talking about a few things, talk about some of the games we've been playing. I'm going to talk a lot about Marvel Snap, so we'll get into that as well. And then the main thing here we're going to do is the Plague Tale Requiem spoiler cast. So 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, me and you, Kirkland, reviewed Plague Tale, and we talked pretty much, I think, everything we had to say about like gameplay and stuff like that, and some character and story stuff, but now we've both beaten the game, and we wanted to talk about some of that other stuff because there is some juicy stuff that goes on. So we'll save that for the end of the episode so that if you're wary of spoilers, you can you don't have to worry about skipping forward or anything like that. And then in between those two things, we're going to talk about some of the news. Now, some of this news is a bit maybe outdated, but since we haven't really talked about any news stuff because of reviews and retros in the last few weeks, I brought some stuff forwards that I'm kind of interested in wanting to talk about still. So a nice loaded up show here. No rest for us. We're right back into it here at GeekVerse. So just some other shout-outs. The God of War Retro, of course, is up now on the free feeds. Ad-free version's up on Patreon. But a review is coming next week for God of War Ragnarok, so tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. As I mentioned, Plague Tale, we did a retrospective for that, which was a good hour and a half, I think, maybe more, talking about that first game. So if you're here for the spoiler cast, make sure to go check that out first. I think the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 review is coming this week.
I would say yes, within the next week. Expect a Modern Warfare 2 review from myself and Mr. Taylor Field.
That'll be fun. I'm very much looking forward to that because I got to play a little bit on the stream and I had a lot of fun with it too. And thank you for Taylor for thumbnails, Amanda for the amazing music. Patreon, Discord, the Sidequest feed, really good time. Especially that Sidequest feed, there's going to be a lot of weird stuff going on in December because the Game of the Year stuff is going to be mixed in there with reviews and the Game Awards stuff. So I think a good time to get subscribed to that feed because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming through out of the normal schedule. And I think that's pretty much it. Any shout-outs from you, Kirkland, before we get into our first topic here?
I don't think so. I mean, no, okay. I'm ready to jump in.
Sure. So the first thing is kind of a topic point 5 is what I've called it here because we talked about this on our newscast that we did in person last week. That was a lot of fun as well. But the video game draft that we did back in January, I think is when we drafted these games, has officially come to a close as God of War was the last thing to come out, and that has its reviews now. So we're not going to go in depth on this because we did that on the newscast, but just another congratulations to you, Kirkland, for winning that. You had a pretty sizable lead because you had 5 games released, and none of us did. So congratulations to you on that. Any thoughts? Are you happy with your strategy overall, your picks overall?
I am. I had a set strategy. I feel like sometimes when we do those picks, I'm just like, oh yeah, let's just go with some fun sounding games and stuff like that and hope for the best. But no, I actually put in a lot of strategy here.
That's kind of what I did, I think.
Yeah. And it really paid off because, like this year has been just packed with games released, just very, very fun ones, very highly rated ones. And, a handful of those were actually in the early stages of the year. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and get these. Obviously in draft format and get all the ones that I wanted, but I was pretty happy with the list. Nice. And I did throw out some some heart picks, maybe like not so much going by the mathematics on statistically making sure that I'll get the most points. And some of them actually surprised me with how they did, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where a lot of the games that were supposed to come out this year got delayed. We had on all of our lists, except for you, of course. So next year's draft, I mean, there was already a bunch of stuff coming out, but now there's all the stuff that got delayed, and then, of course, things that haven't been announced yet. That's going to be a crazy year. Tons and tons of games coming out, so I'm very much looking forward to our draft. We'll probably do that again in January for the new year. And we got to do it quick because there's a bunch of games coming out in January, so we got to get ahead of those stuff before those reviews start dropping. So look forward to that. Let's talk about the games we've been playing. Now, of course, we played a lot of stuff on the stream. I don't know if you want to touch on anything there, but anything else that you've been playing? What do you got here?
I mean, Plague Tale, I'll save my thoughts on that until we get into the meat and potatoes of the topic. Worlds for League of Legends was this last week, and I just, every Worlds cycle, it's just like, oh, this is kind of exciting. I want to jump back into League. So I'll play it a little bit on Friday. My good buddy Denzel, who showed up to the
Super Bowl of League?
Essentially, yeah. It's I don't know if Melee is similar, but they have splits throughout the year, and then at the end, it's like the big tournament, taking all the different regions from Korea, China, North America, all over the world, and the best of the best. Usually China or Korea are the best of the best, but this year is very, very exciting because the most successful team ever, SKT T1, not sure if you heard their name in the nether realms, but they have SKT Faker, so he's this just world renowned, been the best mid laner for ever, and he's the old boy. I do air quotes because he's my age, but in that sphere he is technically the old boy. He's just been doing it since I think season 2 is when he joined the professional scene, and he's just on a team with the rest these 18 and 19-year-old youngins who are in it for the first time, and he's just peaking right now. It is just so exciting to be watching it. The Worlds actually at the time of this recording are finished. I've luckily avoided all spoilers. I just watched the first game and it was really, really entertaining, and yeah, Faker's just phenomenal, so I'm definitely rooting for him. But the other team that they're facing is DRX, which is they were a 4th seed coming in, so it'll be the biggest upset ever. So it is exciting to see them in there, and it's just been really high level play, very, very entertaining. And it's just one of those things that because League's been around for over a decade now, the production is just insane. They just sell out arenas for it now. And I remember in the early days just how small scale it was to be following it. And it's been fun. So I was playing a bit of that on Friday with my buddy Denzel. Shouts out to you. He donated at our charity stream, so always love supporting the cast, and lots of fun playing that with him. And then just Plague Tale, Call of Duty, here and there, getting ready for that review. But that's pretty much just been my games. I dabbled a little bit in Marvel Snap, but not enough to say that I've really been playing it. So yeah, and that's just the games I've been playing right now.
It's funny that you were talking about Faker there being kind of the old guy of the League stuff, because Smash Summit 14 just happened this weekend, the Melee Summit, which is one of the bigger tournaments. It's an invitational, so you wouldn't put it in that kind of same status where it's the biggest tournament of the year, just because it's there's only 16 players in attendance, so it doesn't quite have that same prestige, even if it's the 16 best players in the world, so it's really high level. But Mango ended up winning that, who's been playing since 2006, I think. He's been one of the best since then, so it's pretty cool that after all these years, he's still winning tournaments. I mean, he's had a really good last couple months here. He's won a couple other events, but no matter how old he gets, he's in his 30s now. He can still beat those young players as well. So that's had a little bit of a comparison there. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Even I know that name, and I don't follow Smash or anything like that.
Okay, 2 games. So Marvel Snap, of course, but I want to quickly shout out Into the Breach. We talked about this, I think, back in July when that advanced edition was dropping, that I got the physical one. So I finally got it. It finally shipped. So I've got that beautiful Switch card for the game. But it came with some fun stuff as well. I've got some like stickers here that are like, you know, some of the main mechs and some of the main Vec, the enemy in the game. It's got like this poster. I'm going to open this up. It's pretty cool. Sorry for the audio listeners here. It's like of one of the aliens.
Oh, that's awesome.
Kind of like, I guess like concept art. And then this is like
it's like a schematic. Yeah, I like
schematic here. So that's pretty fun. And then like the manual, which I mean, you know, games don't have manuals anymore, which makes sense, you know, for the environment. Let's get less plastic and paper and all that stuff. But man, this thing is so detailed. There's like a description for each enemy in the game, each mech that you have, like all the effects that maps can have. It's really fun to read through here, and especially because a lot of the new content in there too. So I'm pretty happy that I finally got this. It's pretty cool. They made it worth it with all these extra goodies in there.
That's awesome. You make a good point about like the going to like e-manuals now. If you want to check out the manual, check it out on the website or whatnot. But I don't think I've opened a manual like since that change has happened. And I remember back in the day, you know, whatever, just like you're at a loading screen, just like flipping through, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there. That's not just like do not eat this or something like some weird warning, health warning.
Yeah, there's always the pages like, you know, warning seizures and stuff like that. But then you get into the good stuff where like press A to do this. But man, there is like a nostalgia to that where every time when I was a kid, I remember, you know, I'd get home, like pick up Smash Brawl from the store, and my mom's driving me home, and I'm so excited. Open it up, read through that manual, just like, get that little like precursor.
That smell.
That was always so exciting. So I miss those manuals. It was a good time.
Absolutely. Yeah, just the excitement, the anticipation of playing the game for the first time. So you're just doing as much as you can before you can put the disc in the console.
Yeah. And, you know, Into the Breach is one of those games that since it's kind of longer, it's like a perfect thing when I'm traveling now. So whenever I'm coming to Kelowna on the bus or something like that, I got a 4 to 6 hour long bus ride. That's like perfect. Do a couple runs of that and just burn through the hours. So I did play some Into the Breach this weekend too.
Nice.
Which was, I mean, I don't even use the Switch card because the game's like less than a gig, right? So like, I'm just going to download on my Switch so I don't have to put it in. It's just fun to have. But I played a little bit more of that, which I still like. There's still so much stuff that was added in that update that I haven't got to yet. So that's pretty exciting. I feel like I'm going to have like a year or two worth of stuff to do to get all the challenges for the new content. So once again, if anyone didn't, you know, play that or whatnot, like the game's value is already insane, but man, with that extra content, there's so much going on now. So definitely check out Into the Breach, one of the best indies of all time, I would say.
I mean, have they only put out like the 2 games that I'm aware of, Into the Breach and FTL?
Yeah, and that was 2018 when Into the Breach came out. So obviously this DLC, they would have had some development time in there. Probably not too much considering there isn't really too many new mechanics. It's mostly just like some new things with their already built-in engine and whatnot. But yeah, like you'd think it's probably about time for them to come up with another game if those 2 developers are still working together, which I'm actually not sure if they are. They might be on their own solo stuff, but I'm very excited to see what they do next because they are making just some amazing strategy games here.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't beaten Into the Breach yet, but like I love just, you know, I own both those games, so I love supporting those developers because they just and they make phenomenal content, but also like keep it supported. Like I remember getting that advanced edition years later for FTL. Like I don't even remember when FTL originally came out, but just total cost effective, like worth the cost, I would say, for the purchaser. You just get so much content, and you know, if you're a fan of strategy games, highly recommend both those titles.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe one last shout out here is that, of course, it's already a pretty cheap game, like $10-15. And the update was free. But, you know, part of them doing the advanced edition was that it's on the Netflix app. So on your phone, if you have Netflix, you can sign into that and just play it for free there. So that's pretty cool as well if you want to just check it out. If you're not sure if you want to pick it up, that's a good way to do that. But Kirklin, let's get talking about Marvel Snap. So I've already talked about this on the podcast because I can't not. I'm just so giddy about it. I talked about it a lot on the 24-hour stream as well. But, you know, I haven't talked about it on Sidequest proper yet. So we got to do that, of course. So Marvel Snap came out, I guess, a few months ago to a beta, closed. I think it was, I want to say closed beta. I don't know how you got in there. So people have been playing it for a while. This is like the 6th season of the Seasons Pass, something like that. But it finally launched like open. They're still calling it early access, but it feels like this is a finished game. Like, yeah, you're gonna add more content to it as these live service games have, but I don't really know why it's still an early access title. But anyway, getting past that, it's been out for a bit now. You can play it on your phone. I'm playing it on phone and through Steam. So you can even pull it up in kind of like a weird horizontal sort of tab on your computers. You can kind of just have it on the side. And it's got crossplay as well, which is nice. So I can kind of just plug in no matter where I am on my phone or if I'm sitting on my computer and still level up, the same account. That's pretty nice. And it's very easy. Like, you just sign in with your Google account and you're done. Like, you don't have to do some annoying shit, which sometimes you do to have to, set up some crossplay stuff. But yeah, the basic gist of the game is it is a card game, kind of like your Hearthstones, your Gwents, your Elder Scroll. What was that game called? Elder Scrolls Legends of the World. I don't even think that one's online anymore, so that's probably a bad example. But it's kind of like those. But I think what they wanted to do with this one was make it so the games are very short. They're going to be between like 2 to maximum of, I guess 6 minutes would be the longest a game could possibly be, because there's 1 minute per turn, only 6 turns. And your decks are small, like 12 is the maximum, and you have to have 12. But think about that. Like, most card games is like a minimum of maybe 20, I think, is Hearthstone. Yu-Gi-Oh's like, I think 30 or 40. Magic's like 40, 50, something like that. So it's like a very small contained game. You're probably going to see most of your cards every single game. And I really like it for that. I like that it's quick and very snappy, as the title would suggest there. But yeah, essentially the way it's set up is there are 3 lanes, I guess 3 locations, and you put up to 4 cards in each one of those locations. And rather than battling and like killing other cards, which you can't do that, but the game's more based around increasing your power at each location, and then at the end of the game, after turn 6, it'll calculate however much power you have in whatever lane, and you're trying to win 2 of the 3 locations. You can win all 3 if you want as well. And then there's a weird case where if you tie a location, and let's say I'm winning one, the other guy's winning the opposite one, whoever has the highest power difference in that location, right? So if like I have 13, he has 12 in this location, and the other one he has 16, I only have 5, then he's going to win off the tie because he's got more power against me in that one location. So that kind of thing happens as well. But yeah, a very basic game. Like I said, there is cards that can destroy other cards, but that's not really a big part of the game. Maybe unlock some more stuff. But I think for me, why I'm really enjoying this so much is because one of my favorite parts, if not my single favorite element of these card games, is strategizing and building decks rather than even like playing. I just really like setting them up and thinking about strategies, what cards are going to work well together, synergies, that kind of thing. And because you have smaller decks and a bunch of different kinds of mechanics in there, it's just really fun to either make a deck based on like a certain synergy or strategy, or ones that's like, I'm just going to make an X-Men deck and, get my Wolverine, my Cyclops, Colossus in there and kind of build it up that way. So I like that variety of it too. That's something that I'm curious too, if they're going to add, like, let's say like an X-Men bonus if you put all X-Men characters on, because I could do that, but like those cards don't really synergize that well together. A couple of them maybe do, but it's like I'm not really making the best deck. So that'd be cool if they added something like that. And of course, I don't know how the balance would work there, but if you have all X-Men cards, you get plus power. I don't know what they would make it do, but I'd be curious to see if they do something like that. And yeah, those are kind of maybe some quick overall thoughts. I'm curious, you've played maybe a little bit, and we're talking about it over the weekend and stuff, but what are your kind of just very early impressions of this thing?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I haven't played too much. I did like the tutorial and then a couple of just like quick play games like here and there. And like you said, I do love like how quick they are, because I'm not one to like really play phone games anymore. I feel like I really hit that niche back in middle school when I was on the bus, like city bus for so long, just always playing phone games. But like now, if ever I do, it's probably for that window, honestly, like 5 or 6 minutes if I'm just like waiting for something. And I love that the games are like that. You can just jump in, do a quick round if you want, close it out, and then you're like always kind of progressing in that sense. So it totally fits the category of like the phone games that I would like to play. So yeah, I'm excited to keep playing it more and just see what other cards I unlock and stuff like that, because I love the gameplay. It's very fun, like you said, similar to something like Gwent or Hearthstone, and I had a lot of fun with those games. I didn't sink like hundreds of hours into them, but I sure love them, especially like initially. It was just so fun in like the early stages of those types of games. I'm curious how much of a fall off a game like this might happen. Again, it depends on your person, or maybe not your personality, but just like the type of games that you like playing. So yeah, I'm excited to go further with it, but my initial thoughts are definitely super positive. I really hope that they did what you pitched of like having types systems. I think Ultimate Alliance even kind of had that, if you had like the Femme Fatale or something like that, like the bonuses, because I don't know, it just, like you said, like having the different decks in your collections and just comparing them with friends. Go check out the GV Discord, because there's been so much discussion about that in there, which has been really cool to see, even from someone like me who I can't contribute too much to the talk, but it is cool to see just like the different play style or like the different just things that you're valuing on like your decks, from the different players. So for that aspect, it's really cool, and yeah, I'm excited to see just where it goes with different updates. And like you said, technically it's still in beta, which is weird. I didn't think of that when I was playing it. It seemed really smooth and fluid, and it's the type of thing where I think like those other card games like Gwent or Hearthstone, it's really easy to get into it. Like there's no like big barrier for entry, but like the skill ceiling is just so high of like learning the different strategies, and I think that aspect's really fun too, just discovering like a different pairing that's like, oh, I can't wait to try this, and it goes terrible and you're like, oh, okay, I'm never doing that again, but you know what I mean. So
yeah, I even have like a deck that I change around on the fly. That's just I adapt it to based on like what the daily challenges are. So if I'm trying to like get through those real quick, maybe there's certain cards that will help me get that. Whether it's like you have to play 5 cost cards, so I'll put more of those in my deck so I can make sure I can hit that real quick. But yeah, that's so. There's maybe one of my, I'm gonna say concern. It's not a concern. It's not even a worry. What's like a step below worry in that scale? Would you say? Is there a word for that?
Maybe you're not too sure about it. You're unsure. I don't know.
A fleeting thought. We'll call it.
A fleeting thought. That's perfect. Yeah.
Would be that there's certain builds that seem kind of obvious, and I've been talking with a lot with S-Bubs and Fanboy Clay in the Discord as we're sharing just like a funny game that happened. You take a screenshot at the end, and that's fun to do. Send it to someone and show them like this funny thing that happened, because the game kind of is almost, I'm going to say, intentionally imbalanced, where there can just be crazy situations that based on the locations that pop up and the cards that you got, where you can get some crazy stuff. And like, I'm totally okay with that because of the length of the game. And I don't feel like if I lose, I'm punished in a good way. If anything, I'm still making progress on whether it's my dailies or leveling up so I can unlock some more stuff. But part of that is going to be that there's certain decks that just almost feel like the game is really designed to like, okay, these are the 12 cards you want in this deck. 2 of those being like a movement deck, so cards that have bonuses based on getting moved around between those 3 locations. And so you're going to see a lot of times like, okay, I have a movement deck, and then oftentimes I'll see an opponent, and after a couple turns I'm like, oh, I think I kind of know what deck they have here, and I can kind of almost see what they're going to do, which in one way is good. Even like Hearthstone has that too, where there's Face Hunter deck or something like that, and you expect some cards in there. But since there's only 12 cards in each game, what is it? Like in your first turn, you always get 3 or 4 cards. Each turn you're drawing a card, and then if there's any sort of powers or locations that increase more, like you're going to see 70 to 80%-ish of your deck every single game. So your strategy is going to be mostly similar. In other games, get the perfect combo of cards. In other games, you won't. But you're going to see that kind of thing. So I feel like already a lot of these movement decks almost feel kind of cookie cutter. They almost feel like templates, like they feel kind of the same. And maybe I don't have every card unlocked, but at least 90% of the deck is going to be the same. And the same thing could be said for the kind of death, I don't know what you would call it, like death cards. So something like Carnage. Carnage, when you put him down, he eats the other cards at that location and gets a buff based on which ones. And so if you have that kind of deck, that is a great card to have, because if you put Wolverine down, if you kill Wolverine, he just respawns and goes into another location. So if you put him down, then play Carnage will get the bonus, and then Wolverine will just respawn. So it's like you lost nothing. It's a great combo, right. Of course. But then like if everyone has those cards, they're going to think of that deck and do it, and then you're going to see that same sort of thing over and over again. So I guess maybe that fleeting thought I had is like, man, if the game really keeps moving towards this direction where everyone has the same kinds of decks, I don't think I'm going to find it as fun, because I think it's the variety of it that keeps me coming back, and the fun of making like, oh, I feel like I came up with a cool deck, but if like then the next game I see someone use the exact same thing, then I feel a bit less intrigued by that, I guess. So that's maybe one thing, but I still do feel like a couple of my decks, like I have a deck that's based around using cards that have the ongoing effect, and then cards that buff that and work really well, or a deck filled of like a lot of 1-cost cards, and then ways to power that up and make that worth it. And those, I haven't quite seen people implement those same combinations of cards, so I still feel like I've come up with some stuff, but just as I keep playing the game, I'm curious how I'm going to feel about that, and if these kind of optimal combos come up, because I think at that point I might be out of it, because I feel like I have to play the optimal deck to win. I don't think I'm going to enjoy the game anymore, right. Even if part of the fun for me is making decks and unlocking cards rather than like strictly playing for the win. But I wanted to bring that up. And one thing too, I think the game does really well. It is a free-to-play game, so with that, of course, there's microtransactions everywhere. There's different progression tracks. There's a season pass. There's your like level, which unlocks stuff, and then there's temporary like daily things you can buy. Of course, there's in-game currency and like you can put in real-world money. I feel like that stuff actually works really well and doesn't feel egregious. Of course, there is when you scroll over to that screen, you can pay $99 for your life to get something.
The big chest.
Yeah, of course. Oh, you got to have that in there for the whales of the world who are going to pay for that stuff. But I haven't felt the need to pay any money at all, and I've played, I don't know, between like maybe around 15 hours. And I haven't felt like I've been blocked at all or that I'm not getting a good sense of progression. So we'll see, because also each month is like the season pass rotates. I didn't get the one for October, but maybe if November has some really enticing bonuses, I might get that. It's like $10, I think, for that month-long season pass. So we'll see. I'll keep an eye on that. But so far, I'm not feeling like the need to spend any money, and I'm still getting a ton of stuff and not being blocked. Or there's not like, okay, you can play 3 games a day, and then you got to pay for more tokens to play more. It doesn't have that over-the-top kind of monetization, so that's good. And then I think the last thing I want to shout out here is I think, where I was talking about that deck variety maybe isn't always there. One thing that spices that up infinitively is those locations. Each of those locations I mentioned, each of the 3, has a random location each time. So it might be the Dark Dimension where a certain effect happens, or the X Mansion, things like that. Those, like, most of the time drastically change what's going to happen each game. So I think even just having that in there is great because it changes how you're going to have to strategize. Maybe you get screwed over. Maybe you get a miracle happens when that location is revealed. And there's a ton of them. Like, I want to say there's like at least 50, and I think each season pass they're going to add more. So that's crazy. That is a lot of different stuff. It's not like there's just 10 that you're getting used to them. You can't rely on any one popping up because the odds are so low. So I like that element of it as well. I think they did a really good job there.
That's like endless like combinations, honestly, because you have the 50 and there's 3 in each game that could be rotating. If they just keep adding more, it'll be, basically impossible to like plan your cards around that. So that's nice for the variability. And I feel like with the game, especially right at launch, there's definitely going to be balancing issues where some just strategies are going to just shine so much more than others. And just as they get more updates and stuff like that, hopefully it keeps it all nice and level. And that's what I was saying. Like I am curious to see how far this goes. Like they have Hearthstone tournaments. Is there going to be Marvel Snap tournaments in the future? So.
Yeah. Pay to win tournaments for sure.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Maybe people should know is you're not like opening packs in this game, and other than a couple exceptions, you can't like buy individual cards. So like, there's the season pass where if you buy that, you'll get Miles Morales, and then there's like a temporary like new player bonus where you can buy like a Captain America card right away. But like other than that, there's not really, you can't buy specific cards. So, and I don't know. There's like, each time you level up, you'll get a mystery card. I'm not sure if it just says mystery and you get the same one, everyone gets the same one, or if it truly is random. But that is something I would wonder if they did tournaments. That could be iffy, because I don't know how many cards there is, but I'm still seeing new cards all the time. And when I see a screenshot from SBubs or Fanboy Clay in the Discord, I'm like, man, half these cards I've never seen before on my team or on the opponent team. That's crazy. Or sometimes you'll get a random card, and I'm just like, man, this is awesome. I've never seen Daredevil until this finally moment. It took me 10 hours to see Daredevil. So I think that's going to keep coming. Plus, every month, I think they're probably going to add new cards as part of the Season Pass incentive to keep people buying that. You want to have new fun stuff in there. So obviously, there's a never-ending supply of Marvel characters to feed that in. But, that part of it, too, for me is a lot of fun. And the game looks great. I love the music in it. So it's got all that in it. So I really, looking at what games I'm playing for the rest of the year, and getting ready for Game of the Year discussions, I'm like, okay, there's a few more things that might shake up my list, but I'm feeling like mostly solid. But then like Marvel Snap comes in here, I'm like, man, this is probably gonna high in my top 10. I'm fucking loving this. So we'll see how I feel in December when I'm actually making my list and putting the episode out. But I feel like I'm gonna be playing this for a while. I'm really really enjoying this one. So I know we got a lot of Marvel fans in the audience, of course. We're covering all the MCU stuff. Black Panther's coming out this week. Check out our review for that. But yeah, I think I'll be playing this for a while. So I'll probably talk about this a lot more on the podcast over the coming months, maybe years. Kirkland, who knows?
I hope so.
Do you have any thoughts on anything else based on what I said, or do you have any questions as someone who's just getting into it right now?
I think I'm like too new to like ask to like know what type of questions to ask. So I'm, as I go further on, I might have to pop into the Discord chat and just get some questions there. It seems like there's some pros in there. I don't think you're alone with your 15 hours of playtime. I mean, some of those guys are probably even up there, more so than what you are, right?
Well, it's fun. We were even like brainstorming like potential deck builds based off like, oh, someone saw this crazy card. I'm like, oh, how would you use that? That seems like a bad card, but it's like, oh wait, but what if you combo with this and that? And that part of it's really fun, that it feels like kind of a community thing too, because people are unlocking one card at a time. So you're kind of the progression. Like, even though you might hear that and think, wow, that seems really slow, but because you only have 12 cards in a deck, like each card is like a big deal, I guess. There isn't like any fluff in there, and since each card is a character that someone might love, that might be their favorite Marvel character, I think that adds a good element to it as well. So yeah, we'll report back on that. But with that, let's take our first ad break, and then we'll get back and talk about the news. We are back, and we're going to keep it in the Marvel verse for a little bit here, because Midnight Suns recently... this is coming out in December, of course. They recently showed off what characters are coming in the battle pass for that game, the season's pass, whatever they call it. They've talked about how they're doing 4 packs post-launch, and maybe they'll do more if the game's very successful. Each pack's going to have a character and bonus missions, maybe some new enemy types. I'm not sure how much like story content would be part of that, but I'm sure there'd be like maybe an X-Men pack where you're building up to fight Magneto or something like that. So I feel like it will probably have some story element to it. Just who knows how much like new voice acting and whatnot will be in there. But they revealed the 4 characters, and they did it in a maybe classic Marvel way, where they changed their like Twitter handle to like Deadpool Sons, and it was like Deadpool's like taking over their Twitter account and like leaking all this information and like trying to get in the game. So with that, Deadpool is one of the 4 DLC characters coming, along with Venom, who I think Venom has been shown off in the main game, like trailers and stuff. So I guess they're going to make him into a playable character. Storm from X-Men, which is a huge surprise for me. I didn't know she was really associated with Midnight Suns team, but that's cool. And then Morbius, which I wonder if that was always their decision, or if like the Morbius memes were part of it, because I think even in one of their tweets, like Deadpool made like a Morbin time joke or something like that. So, Kirklin, what do you think about these? I think you're similarly on the fence for Midnight Suns, but what do you think about these 4 character additions? I mean, I know you got one of these guys right on your wall behind you here.
Yeah.
So excited for these characters?
Absolutely, and like you, I thought Venom already was in that main game.
Yeah, like he'll probably be a villain in there, but I guess
that's a good point.
Be a playable character.
And if I got the game, I would have to do that, because I love Venom. He's probably my favorite Spider-Man character among that roster. And I mean, Deadpool fits really well. I am really shocked about Storm as well. Maybe I just my knowledge of Midnight Suns and their associations are just very low. But Morbius is that one made me chuckle when I saw that one. Just because, it's like I feel like it probably was because of the Morbin time memes and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'm curious to see how he plays. I feel like all these characters have very different movesets and stuff like that. So if there's a lot of variability there, I think it's great additions. Just more chances to change up your strategy, since it is at the end of the day a strategy game. So I'm I don't know. I'm looking for it. It does nothing to like kill my hype or anything like that. It doesn't push me against wanting to buy it. And if anything, it's like, okay, if I am buying it, I probably would want to fish up for the Seasons Pass, or whatever the hell they're called these days. Yeah. Was it always Seasons Pass to get like the next few DLCs out? Is that what it was?
I mean, some games call it Battle Pass, Seasons Pass.
Okay.
I'm sure there's
whatever
like 1,000
it is.
names for it. But
yeah. Midnight Suns Pass.
Yeah. I'm excited because I think looking at these characters, like I think Storm has a good chance to be a really cool kind of maybe crowd control character, or one who's like changing the map in interesting ways, like make it rain, and then that adds like buffs for certain characters. Like that sounds fun. Morbius, I'm sure, is going to be like pretty fast and probably have like lifesteal stuff to him. Venom, I think he'll probably be like a very tanky kind of character. Maybe you can put down some like goo symbiote pools and I don't know, do something like that to slow opponents down. I think Deadpool is actually the one I'm curious about from a gameplay perspective. Obviously, story-wise, they can do some fun fourth wall jokes and things like that. But yeah, I'm really curious from like a gameplay perspective how they're going to make him interesting. I mean, I guess he's got swords, he's got guns, and he can teleport. So like, there you go. that alone will make an interesting character. But I wonder how they'll make him kind of a team player, because he almost seems like kind of a solo man in that way.
Right. Good point.
But yeah, I am excited for these characters, and I like the costumes that they have for each of them, because Midnight Suns kind of has its kind of black and gold as the primary outfits, and then they have other ones you can get either with the Seasons Pass or just in-game. There's all sorts of different costumes, which that's always a fun part about Marvel games as well. But I really like the default looks they have for all these characters, so I'm already like 100% sold on this game. I'm very excited for it, and I think I was already pretty much sold on the getting the Seasons Pass, even if I haven't touched the game yet. But this even adds more to it. I was maybe hoping for a Moon Knight or an Elsa Bloodstone, but I'm very excited for Storm. Venom will be cool, and Morbius and Deadpool I think I'm more mid on, but I'm sure they'll make me change my mind when I'm actually playing those characters. So we'll keep an eye on that as the game. All that DLC will probably come out 2023. I don't know if it would take. I don't know if that would dip into 2024 on any of those, but I'm sure we'll get a nice quick cadence of that stuff. So I'm very excited about that. Moving on, a couple things here, and these are maybe kind of quick hits, but I wanted to bring these up. One being that Embracer Group. We've talked about them a lot recently as they acquire everything under the sun, and one of those things was Square Enix's Western Studios. We talked about that back in. Oh man, when was that? I think it was like maybe April, May, something like that. We talked about what comes with that, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, things like that. Unfortunately, they have decided to shut down Square Enix Montreal. This is the developer who made the kind of some of the mobile games like Tomb Raider Go, Hitman Go, Deus Ex Go, I think was what it's called as well. I think they just called all of them Go, which I haven't actually played any of these. I've wanted to, but they're not. Like, I can't get them on my phone. I think my phone's too old. But, like, all of them seem really cool. They're kind of like smaller puzzle versions of those games and mechanics. And everything I've heard about them is really cool. So this is too bad that this studio is shutting down. So just, I don't think you've played any of these. But I guess my question with this and why I wanted to bring this up is that we've seen Embracer acquire all this stuff. And of course, it takes time. You know, they acquire these things. That's like planting the seed. And it takes years before that grows into actual games. And we still haven't really seen that. We've seen some of the remakes and things that they've been doing, but we still haven't seen the Embracer Group with all these huge AAA studios that they've acquired. We haven't seen the fruits of that, those acquisitions. But do you think this is like a sign of things to come, where they're going to be shutting down a lot of these? I know this happens a lot, and we've even seen this a lot with WB recently, where new owners come in and they, slice everything up and then just release a few things. But do you think this is something we can expect more from Embracer? And if so, that's obviously probably kind of scary.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like with a big acquisition, like you said, acquisition like what you mentioned. Yeah, like you said, like when the new owners come in, like there's definitely going to be changes like that. So this isn't too surprising. I am curious just how far it goes, if it is just one or two more, or just if they just keep going and to fit the plan that they have laid out going forward. If just certain developers don't fit that, they'll just get rid of them. But I was checking out the list. I did play Life is Strange. Apparently they did that one too. I think the first and second one. But that was it on the list. I have been aware of the Hitman, or not the Hitman Goes, just all the Go games, but I haven't played them myself. But it is unfortunate because I check it out and there's like 160 employees or something that are just like out of work now. It's always sad to see. But I don't know. I'm excited to see. I mean, hopefully soon, like more of the positive news about like the Embracer Group purchase. But as of right now, it is a bummer to see that, especially when it's in Canada. It's always nice to see some.
Yeah, like they could have done Lord of the Rings Go. Come on,
they could
keep these guys around. They got that
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this individual studio shutting down is a lot of these acquisitions, because they're acquiring. That's always the thing. They acquire some like big thing, like the rights to Lord of the Rings, or Square Enix Western Studios. But then they're also acquiring like all these indie devs or smaller publishing labels and things along the way. And I think with those, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna acquire the studio who makes Teardown, I forget what the name of that studio is, but they did that as well. There's no chance they're gonna just buy that for the Teardown IP and shut down that studio. It just doesn't make any sense. But if you're talking about this, where they acquired a bunch of studios and IP all at once, then you think, okay, well, part of that, I guess, is that they really wanted it for Crystal Dynamics or the Tomb Raider IP, and this studio unfortunately kind of came with that, and they don't really have a use or a plan, or they just need to save money where they can so they can make more acquisitions later. And so this studio is unfortunately the one that is kind of shit out of luck out of that bigger acquisition. So when it comes down to it, when they're acquiring onesies and twosies, little studios here or there, I think those ones are probably pretty safe. There's a reason they got them. But then, when you're talking about these bigger ones, like there's going to be things along the way that just don't make the cut, unfortunately. So hopefully these developers either can get paired up with other Square Enix studios, and maybe they just shut down this actual studio, but these developers can be kept around. But I don't think that happened here. So hopefully they can get into some other works, make some other cool mobile games or something like that. Or who knows where they'll go from here. But that is, as you mentioned, that is a lot of people to be sent out. So kind of some sad news. And we'll definitely keep an eye out, because I'm keeping a close eye on Embracer. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something. There's some big plan here that we're not really as welcome to, because we just don't hear from them. They don't have like a face. They don't have a mouth of Sauron, if you will, to just tell us what their plans are here. So it's a bit awkward. And moving into the next thing, kind of maybe a quick hit as well, but CD Projekt Red has also been making a lot of moves lately. They've opened several studios in the last few years, and they're expanding. And I don't know what this is, but I don't know if you've seen this. They've just been announcing in advance everything they're doing, what each of these studios is working on, pretty much well in advance. Even if these games aren't going to come out for years, they're trying to get maybe ahead of leaks. Maybe they're just trying to buy favor back because of the whole Cyberpunk fiasco, and still trying to recoup their name by announcing things even if they're far away that are going to get people excited. So I like this. I like having some transparency. One of the things that comes along with this is that they announced they are doing a Witcher remake. The first Witcher, to be clear, not the Witcher 3, which already has the next gen versions and all that stuff. So what are your thoughts about this?
I've played a good chunk of the first Witcher, actually, which is extremely dated. If you've played the new Witcher, it just plays extremely different. Something I had it on PC, and there's two control schemes. One of them is you can play the entire game with just the mouse, you don't need the keyboard at all, which is always really strange, but goes to say just how that combat plays. It's not very innovative, which is funny to say, because I mean you're someone that didn't even really like the gameplay of the third game, so I would be curious how much they're changing the game. Said on there that they're doing it all in Unreal Engine 5, which I am so excited to get my hands on the first Unreal Engine 5 game. I played the Matrix demo on cool. PlayStation 5, and that just blew my mind. It's crazy. Just I remember getting a PS3 and be like, I don't know how they're gonna beat these graphics, the old meme. But where we are now and where we're going, it's just super, super exciting. So in that sense, I think that's super, super exciting. I think about last year they said that The Witcher 3 was being remade on next gen console with all the DLCs, and that actually got canceled. That just didn't happen, and I was really looking forward to that, because I never beat Witcher 3. I was looking for an excuse to get back in, because I heard that the DLCs are again, some of the most value that you'll get out of a $15 DLC. It's an entire 60-hour new game.
You felt like you needed a remake of it to want to go back?
I think just again, just an excuse to I got my PS5, have everything running 60 frames per second, just looking immaculate, and then it comes with all DLCs. I don't own the DLCs,
right.
So it would just make it easier.
Next gen version can or the current gen version, I should say, could get you there, because they probably would have 60 frames on that, and I imagine 4K support and stuff like that, I would think.
Absolutely.
But the textures, I mean, no matter what, the textures are going to be outdated.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not the worst thing ever. It's not The Witcher 3 is one of those PS2 games or something that it's a lot harder to get. I still have my physical for the PS4 version. But I wasn't the biggest fan of the first Witcher. I feel it was just the story itself was very basic from where they are now. There's no Ciri or anything in it, and I really love that character. So I don't know, just for whatever reason I didn't fall in love with that first game. But who knows? Maybe this will just, because it's on Unreal Engine 5, it'll just be one of those things where the gameplay and the look of it is so beautiful that it really just reignites, or maybe ignites a whole new flame of passion that I would have for that series, because I do really like the Witcher world. I think you were saying that you were going through the books, and I've gone through the first book, I think, and I just really like that world. It's really interesting. So I don't think this is bad news by any means. It's just a bummer that I had my sights on that 3 remake, and then that was gone, and then now we're getting this. It's okay, are we actually getting this now, since they already canceled that other one? But we'll see what happens. Like you said, because it is announced or they're laying their plans out so far in advance. It is nice to get that transparency, but with that, it's okay, well, if they've canceled things in the past this way, do I get my hopes up for this? I don't know. We'll just wait and see. So,
yeah, I think this is one of those cases where, going along with what I was saying of CD Projekt Red setting up a bunch of new studios, I imagine this is being worked on by one of those. I think they even set up a studio here in Vancouver, but I doubt it's that main developer that is making this. I feel like they're on the bigger and better things. They're on The Witcher 4,
right?
Cyberpunk's getting a sequel, whatever they're doing. I think that's where that studio is going. And then, so I think in that sense it's good, because when I hear that Guerrilla Games is working on a Horizon Zero Dawn remake, that's like the most sad thing ever to me, that like this game that is still modern and playable on its current consoles and the latest console, it's like, man, all these super talented developers are just, I'm gonna say, waste time and make this stupid remake for all the, like, that is so sad to me. So I don't think that's going to be the case here. Obviously, Last of Us is here, but I'm not here to dump on Sony all day. But I think here the biggest part of the puzzle here for me is that I believe that first Witcher, and I think Witcher 2 as well, were only ever PC games. I don't think they ever actually came to consoles.
Oh, wow.
I think Witcher 3 was the first time that it made the jump, and that was part of the reason why it became a lot more popular than those other ones, is just because it was readily available for a lot more people and not just the PC crowd at that point. So I think that's got to be part of this as well, is that it's coming to everything. I think if it's Unreal 5, I doubt it's coming to Switch, where I know The Witcher 3 has found a pretty big audience there as well. It came out a few years down the line, but it still came out on the Switch eventually, and I don't think it runs the best, but yeah, I really don't think we'll see. Maybe a cloud version of this one, the remake, would be going there, but either way, just have that on PS5, Series X, and all that. I guess you could play it on your Steam Deck now, but I think this is pretty cool. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm reading through the books. I think I'm on the third or second right now. I forget which one I'm actually on. I'm going through it very slowly, so maybe by the time this remake comes out, I'll be at least cleared a couple more books, or if not all of them, because my plan is read through the books, and assuming I keep enjoying it, get through all of them, and then start watching the show and playing the games, finally get into it. So it might take me a decade before I'm actually playing Witcher 3, which I will do eventually, because I know even if I don't like the gameplay, I still got to get in there and really dive into that game, because it's one of the greatest of all time kind of thing. But yeah, maybe the time it'll work out that I'll be ready for this remake when it's dropping. Yeah, any other thoughts on this, or shall we move along?
I'm ready to keep going.
All right, so let's take our last ad break of the day, and then we'll get into A Plague Tale. We are back. Plague Tale Requiem came a few weeks ago. As mentioned, we did our first review of the game, where we talked largely about gameplay and some of the earlier moments of the story. But we're here for the spoiler cast. We're going to talk about some of the story beats. If there's anything else you have on gameplay, of course, you can mention that as well. But I think that's mainly what we're doing here, and some of the stuff at the ending that is pretty wild that happens. So I'm just right now, spoiler doors are going to break wide open. If you don't want to hear this stuff, step aside. If you want to go hear back our thoughts for that first review. But yeah, this is going to go. We're going to go all the way to the end, the post credits, all that stuff we're going to be talking about here, and we don't want to hold back at all. This is what we're here for. So we're going to get into it. Is there anything you want to mention about the gameplay? Any revelations that you had? Because we did talk about some of the thoughts, and I don't think you had quite got the crossbow yet. So is there anything else in the gameplay sense of things that you wanted to touch on?
I like the new mechanic of like the pulling system with the crossbow. That was always fun.
Sure, yeah.
Like finding those locations, like pull the things with the crossbow. But like you mentioned in the first review that we did, a lot of the gameplay really is basically the same of what the first game is, other than just like some quality of life with like the quick tool, how like you can just, I don't know, it was just easier to use, at least from what I thought going through it. And that was another thing where like, because I was earlier on in the game, I didn't have as much combat as like goes on like definitely in the later stages, and that's where you're saying like there definitely is a lot more combat in the second game versus the first game. Yeah. And I think for the first game, because there wasn't as much, I thought it was like I had no qualms or issues with it, but by the end of this game, I feel like I was actually getting kind of annoyed with it. It just seemed like it was like, okay, here we go again. Like this is how I handle these characters, and I don't know if that's just something because I was just trying to like. It sounds negative, but it wasn't negative in the time. Just like trying to get through it, sort of sense of like, okay, I just want to get to the end of the story. And when you have those long sequences of gameplay where it's not like it's egregious game, like it is like using the crossbow, it doesn't feel very terrible or sluggy to get it going, but it's just like very repetitive in that sense. And if I had screwed up in something, it's like, okay, now I got to redo that whole sequence. Are you kidding me? So that's for a couple different reasons, I ended up just switching the difficulty to the narrative setting to just make those a lot easier to get through, where I don't think I died like once going through it after that point. But I don't know, it was just something that was a little bit more noticeable to me. It didn't like it's not going to knock my rating by any means, but it was just a little bit like, oh, I kind of wish that they did change a lot more things, especially later on in the game when you find out like what the other protector had as like weapons and stuff. I was just like, oh, I really was hoping to get like some melee weapons or something. I get it, like Amicia is like, at the end of the day, she's not like a super brute like enforcer character. She's definitely deadly, but I was still just kind of no, exactly. I was just hoping for, I don't know, something like that to just make it feel a lot different than what the first game was. Because although okay, I can shank a character like worst case scenario, but I can't. I don't have like a crude bastard sword or something. Which again is kind of like a hyperbole. I'm not expecting her to have a sword double the size of her body, but I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, there in the first game, you have an extended, a whole chapter dedicated to playing as Hugo, which in this game you do like a very short one. But like you have that where like if they wanted to, they could have gone that route where you play as Arnaud for a chapter and you get to do some fun stuff. Because you're right. Like, I don't know if like a full melee system would have made sense for the character of Amicia, but I don't know. There's like all sorts of weapons that could have done her favor, but. In that first review, you were, I guess just to zoom out a little bit here, you were very positive on it. You were like loving everything about the game, and obviously you just talked about how your gameplay sequence maybe went a bit downhill, though probably still like neutral or positive for the most part. But like, without getting into anything in particular, like how do you think the story closed out for you? Were you happy with this as both as a sequel and its own story? Did it land for you? I think we talked about how I was maybe had some issues with the villains and some character stuff, but how are you feeling now that you're through the experience?
I think like very general thoughts. I could just say that I like the first game more than the second game. It's funny, I got to certain points in the story where I'm like, oh, this is what Dylan was talking about. Like it's very obvious of like, oh, this character, or maybe a certain like boss battle sequence that was just kind of underwhelming.
Against the Count, is that one?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Anytime there's quick time events in like a boss battle, it's just it leaves me with a sour taste in my mouth. It's very like flashbacks to the end of Shadow of Mordor, where you have this like very epic villain that you've been waiting the whole game to get to, and you just like hit a couple buttons at the right time. It's just like
I hear you.
Not for me, but but that being said, like I do like the first game more. I still think this is a great game. I think like we mentioned, the quality on how beautiful it looks, and it still really captures like the heart and feel that I think the first game had, where it really makes me root for these characters and like really get attached to them. So if I happen to say goodbye to someone, like it actually leaves me kind of choked up. And I think that the game and like the developers just do such a good job at sprinkling in these like really heartful moments in this like super dark story, where again it's just like, okay, like there is still hope for this, but these characters feel like real people. Like they feel like this world is actually weighing on them. There's multiple times we mentioned like the little I don't know if they're called moments, but it's like a collectible that you'll get, and then they'll just say something. And there was one where Amicia kind of like she just like goes on her knees and like crumbles. It's like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, and it's just like that's such a real thing to be happening, right? Like where you're just going through so much heavy events and loss, and it really takes a toll on a character. And going through a video game, I feel like it's really easy for your protagonist to just be like a blank sheet of paper. It's just like they have no reactions to it because you are the player, and you're just like you're killing 30 people or whatnot, or like your buddy's dying, but like it's just it's a program character, like they don't have that feel. But this game, like they just do such a good job at capturing that. And I remember after our retrospective for the first game, I said that like I can't wait to see just what the studio does, because they're so good at like bringing that humanity to these characters. So all of that is phenomenal. I think there is a couple like weird decisions that some of like even just Amicia makes that was just like, oh, this seems like it wouldn't be something that she would do, but it's like for a story purpose we just have to do it, and that kind of upset me a little bit, just because like I don't know, it was going so well, but a couple instances it just makes me think that the potential wasn't fully utilized, I think, for what they're setting up. Some of the side characters I think could have been explored a little bit more, some of their backstory or anything like that. But all in all, yeah, like I said, it's a great game, but I think the ending, it's tough, because I do think that the ending is like, I'm satisfied with it. I think, but there's just a couple things along the way where it might have been a little bit rocky. Where the end of the first game, I'm not gonna say it's perfect or anything, but I do think it was handled better than what this one was. Okay. I don't know. Again, I threw a lot in there for my general thoughts, but yeah.
I wanted to, before we maybe break down some of the characters and story beats, one thing, maybe I'll show a couple things here. One is that, pretty much right after we talked about you're going to go on that boat and you're going to go to this island, the island of Lacuna. That sequence of the game for me, we talked about this on the 24-hour stream as well, but like, man, that sequence of the game for me works so well, where I just loved exploring this new town, and then when you get through that town sequence and the dinner, and then you're just free to kind of roam the island in what is the most open-ended section in the whole game. You do have like one set place that continues the story, but just when you get out there, it's like, oh yeah, you can go any direction you want. You can go on the main roads, down through some trails, visit the river. There's like kind of little areas where you can use your equipment to, solve some bonus puzzles, or you can just go see what people are doing. All this kind of stuff for me, like that I just love that. And then you backtrack through that area a lot too, so it adds a lot of context. And then you see that area fucked up later when the rats are coming through, which is sad because I love that area so much. I'm like, man, this place was so beautiful, and now it is absolutely disgusting, and it's very much my fault. Like that, you feel the consequence of that. So I had to shout that out, because exploring Lacuna and having this larger open area, not that I want this to turn into an open world game or anything, because I think it's best as being linear focused story adventure, but when it gave you that opportunity to just open up the game and have some freedom, that felt great. And it was also, to that point, I think I was feeling maybe a bit burnt out on some of the combat or some of the stealth sequences, which were very challenging. To just have that moment to breathe and take in the vista and not really have any sort of urgency, not have to do a stealth or battle sequence for a while, because even once you're past that open area and you start going up the mountain, you don't really, like, there's a bit of a stealth there, but you get a lot of, like, there's a lot of just story and stuff happening there too. I really liked that breath of fresh air and kind of the midpoint of the game to just have maybe even like 2 or 3 hours of not really having to engage with the combat or stealth at all and just getting to exist in this world. I think that, to me, was the highlight of the game, was that sequence there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it so well, of just having like that fresh breath in the middle, because that's probably like, I don't know, halfway through the game, or maybe just under halfway through the game, like something like that.
8 or 9 is when you're like out of the building and free to roam around.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe just a bit over, but yeah, I mean, I mentioned to you off cast, like while I was doing it, I'm like, I don't think I've done combat in like 2 hours right now or something like that. And I was completely fine with it, because I just got lost exploring there, because you can follow the eagles or whatnot, but there's not a time limit on it. Like, you can just go and explore. And I think I agree with what you said, how I don't think they should just make a game like this open world, because it just doesn't fit that narrative sense too well. But just sprinkling them in there, it does it so well, because if you spend a lot of time just exploring like those areas, when you come back to it, it's like, oh, I recognize this rock like very easily, or whatever. Maybe the rock's a bad example. This nice floral design or something, and when it's just like on fire or just covered in rats, it hits a lot harder. And I mean, I mentioned it in the first game. This one had it as well. How you like have an area that you are early in the game, and then by the end you like come back to it, and it's not looking too good. So it's kind of like a formula that they had, at least through the first 2 games. But I love when games do that, because again, if I spend a lot of time and recognize the areas, it hits so much harder of being like, okay, I saw what this was like before the chaos, other than just going to a new chaotic area, which I'm not saying it has to be that all the way, but for me at least, it scratches a cool little itch for my gameplay experience wise. And man, like the first impressions I had of that island, I was just like blown away. I wanted to explore all of it, so I'm so happy that it gave me that possibility to just go free roam, and all of, like the floral designs of everything, and just everybody like getting ready for this festival. It was just so happy, and everyone just seemed so happy. And to have that in the middle of a game like this, I was not expecting the big like dark turn of like all the rats. I mean, I should have. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it, but the rats come and it looks terrible. A lot of people die, and it just it leaves you. Yeah, it's gross, but big Midsommar vibes, I'll say, of just like all the
flower crowns and flower petals all over the place. The color scheme is the same too in that first town area. Very like white, and then like just decorated with the flowers. Yeah.
And that's what I was like. All the different areas that we go through, I'm gonna combine both games because the first game you're mostly kind of in like Guyenne, I think was the town, and
Sure.
it's you're mostly there. But like in this game, you go to so many different areas, and they all just look so good. Whether you're on a beach, whether you're in the mountains, whether you're
the kind of sandstone rocky zones, like where you go to the dye factory, where there's like, kind of the pools of paint. That place was so cool, like just beautiful. Love that.
Absolutely. Everywhere I went, like they seemed very different too, and all the colors, they just really popped. Just visually, this game is phenomenal. They did such a good job with it, and the lighting, the lighting is such a big, I don't know, factor on like something visually beautiful like this, and they totally nailed it. So huge credits to them for that reason. And when you get into the darker stuff, whether you're in like the rat, I don't even know what it's called. They're like nest or something that's just like that black goo. That's that symbiote type goo. Goo. Venom would love it.
Ghoulish,
like again, it's dark and like you don't really get to see much, but still, like it's a really good design. Like they do such a good job, just designing all that stuff. So all the art is huge credit to them.
I agree fully. Let's talk about some of these new characters.
Yeah.
First, talking about Sophia. I really liked her. She's a lot of fun. I mentioned this on our first review that I don't think any of the new characters in this game really eclipse any of those in the first game for me, but I think Sophia's the one who gets closest. I don't feel like she has too much of an arc, and it's a bit, maybe even like a bit too convenient, or what's the word I'm looking for? But like she kind of just gives up her life because of like she owes a favor, and she really goes on like this crazy journey for people she hasn't really met. But I think they do a good job of building up that bond between her and your main characters. And I think maybe my favorite part is when she learns of who Hugo is and what powers he has. And also when she just sees Amicia killing people in cold blood and her reactions to those things, and that she even says like, I need some time to think about this. And she still goes along with it when she's like just doing this dangerous stuff. But I think she's fun. She's a fun character. She's a good addition. I also like just the look of her character. She's cool. But yeah, she doesn't kind of have an arc, but I still enjoyed her as a companion on this journey.
Yeah, this is a character where I like, while we were playing along, I'm like, she's fooling me because I really shouldn't like this character just because she's so like, I don't know, like there's not that, like that was the one that I was saying, like I feel like there's not much to her like backstory or anything like that. You don't really unpack it other than a couple lines maybe like, I said I would never kill again, and like that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Or like kind of her ties with what's the name, Arnaud,
yeah.
Yeah,
and you're right, because a lot of it seems kind of implied because she's like a kind of a pirate, merchant person who has like a lot of power and a lot of people that work for her. So you almost, even if they don't fill in those details, like they give enough of those little kind of touches that you almost like build up this mythos of who she is or who she was back on the mainland.
Exactly, and like again, like that mystery factor, it does, it can go a long way, and it definitely made me just, I think, intrigued by her character because like what you said, like her look is really cool, and just like her attitude and the way that she carried herself was really I don't know, I liked it for her. But just there's so many times when it's just like, oh yeah, I guess I'll go with you because I have no other things to do. It's just like I kind of like chuckle to myself like, okay, like that's it, okay, no, this is just our companion that we get her little light refractor, so it's like a new useful ally to have. But like you said, compared to the side characters in the first game, I feel like they had a very believable like reason to be with us. For this, it was just like kind of a convenience thing. And even with Arnaud, it just, I don't know, like I never was fully sold on just like him tagging along with them. I know we'll talk to him, but like for Sophia, it was just one of those things where I'm like, she's fooling me because I really like this character, even though it's like all these little like lines that she has of being like, well, I guess I'll just go along with it, or I guess I'll just do it. And it's just like for convenience sake of having another side character in the story is just, I think they could have wrote that a lot better.
Yeah, it's contrived was the word I was looking for. Where
contrived.
A bit forced too. So I hear you there. But yeah, get into Arnaud. What do you think about him?
I really grew to like this character again. Like I feel like in the initial stages, like why he was with us, it was just, I don't know if I like missed a line or something. It was just like, why is he just working with us right now? Like he just like beat the shit out of Amicia. Yeah. She's got like a concussion and like possible brain damage, and he's just like, we'll just go along with it. And I don't know. I think we could have had like a better dialogue between him and our main characters on like really like what is the driving force. I know we get something, but for me it wasn't enough to really sell me on it. I think the little moments between, again, like while you're playing the game and you just have him with you and like the little one-liners that he'll give to Hugo or something like that, or like the quick lines of like not fully explaining like what happened. I guess he kind of did like someone that he loved was killed because of the count or something like that, and
which is like they don't really go into any more
no,
depth
yeah,
than that, right? They just say the villain killed this guy's loved one. Like that's the most basic writing thing of like there's no iteration or nuance to that. It's just they started with the most basic premise and just kind of like we'll just leave it. That's fine. He'll have a couple throwaway lines about it.
Exactly. And like it's a similar thing to Sophia, where it's just like I really shouldn't care for this character, but just those little moments was enough to kind of be like, I like him with the crew. I liked how his story ended. I think it was very fitting for like out of anyone to die would have been him, you know. Possibly another character that we'll get to, but I like his shield and everything, and how it was just like his symbol. He was the wall. He reminded me of just like a Game of Thrones character or something like that. Yeah. And I quite liked utilizing him. Honestly, by that point, I was really abusing it. Just like Arnaud, take out this guy, and he just like goes in there with combat. I would have loved what you pitched, where it just like goes to him, and you're like doing like a full on melee gameplay.
It's funny because like in the first game you had. I can't remember his name, but you kind of have the blacksmith's son,
right?
And his abilities to like he'll go like knock people out for you. And this is kind of just like the one-up version of that, where it's like you just send Arnaud to kill people. But you know, I like about that too. Like it doesn't feel overpowered. Where if you send him in against like 3 or 4 people, he will probably lose that fight, and then you'll have to restart. So I like that you kind of have to like pick off a couple people and then send him in, and he's not going to do it stealthily by any means. But I like that ability, and maybe one of my critiques of his other. I'm going to call it a pseudo ability, was that you have this moment where there's a bunch of rats in front of you, and there's no way to get through, of course. And what you end up doing is shoot a fire bolt at his shield, and then he uses that as your source of light so you can get through this sequence. And to me, it was just weird that's like, this is incredibly powerful, and we never use it again. Like, it's just like we have this one-shot tool that will get us through almost any sequence, but we just choose never to use it again. And I understand if that breaks the balance of the game, but I was like, maybe you should have not included that at all, because the whole game I was like, why don't we do this again? But then, of course, my characters could not think about this thing. Of course, every like puzzle in this game is some weird contrived scenario, but that one was it was like a cool moment, I guess, but then I was just like craving it the rest of the game. And I was like, why can't I do this whenever? I tried shooting an arrow at him many times, and it never worked for me the same way.
That's funny.
Yeah. What do I want to say about his character? I think it's kind of what you said of where like his backstory is a bit forced, and I think for me, there's just something off about the writing of the character. How, you know, he kind of was fooling you playing double agent, where he was almost using you to get access to the count so that he could take him out. And I understand he's supposed to be kind of like a rough guy who's plays it off the cuff and stuff, but I felt that it was very strange that his plan was to go up to the count during this meeting when there's guards everywhere and civilians everywhere, and he was just going to try and kill him right then and there. Like, it just felt like way too bonehead move for me to like feel like a believable thing that a character would do, when he could have, like, I don't know, tried to use some stealth in some way or a bow and arrow or something. I know that maybe that would have been too easy or something like that, but that sequence just, I guess it didn't really work for me so much. And then I think maybe the biggest fumble for the character for me is that you don't see him again for several hours, right? Like after he gets pent up, or locked up, I should say, not pent up. He's just gone, and then eventually you save him at the end, and you kind of know that he's not dead the whole game, right? Because once again, it's like Beatrice in the first game. They don't show it on screen. He's definitely not dead. So you know that he's going to come back at some point, and I think the moment of you saving him is good and all, but I don't know what I would have wanted, whether it's Amicia and Hugo either breaking him out sooner, or maybe even just like sneaking into the dungeon to go talk to him, or whether it was a sequence of like you play as him, and you like maybe he does some little side mission, he breaks out of the dungeon, whatever it is. I don't know. I just felt like that to me. Also, we talked about this before, how Beatrice and Lucas just fuck off for most of this game as well. There's something about the pacing of that where I would have liked if they used the switching up of perspectives to fill us in on what our other characters are doing, because I think it makes them feel like they don't get the opportunity to blossom into a fully fledged out character when they're missing for half the game, And we know they're doing stuff, but we just don't really ever get to see that, and we never get filled in on exactly what they're doing. And I guess in Arnaud's case, he was just sitting in a prison all day, but I don't know. I would have liked to see more about that, whether it's him being in jail reminiscing about his wife or something like that, or maybe the Count comes in and you see a conversation between them where you find out what happened in the backstory, and it's more interesting than just like the Count killed his wife and that's why he's a terrible person. I would have liked a little bit more nuance there, and we didn't quite get it with the character.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that even ties into like because like you said, like I don't know what it was. It was just something about the character. I was like, I feel like there is something missing here, and I think it's very similar to my like when he just joins the crew, and I'm like, really? Like this I don't like. I get it. Everybody has a backstory, and like you know, like you don't exactly know what they're going through, but like he just straight up like possibly gave brain damage to Amicia, and like just was like totally gonna kill her, and it's just like no, we're just gonna forget about that, and they don't really talk about like, oh, I really like didn't want to do it, you know, I had to put on a show just to like for this reason, or like I don't know, just some sort of line like that I think could have gone a long way. And I really like what you said of just having like an actual sequence, maybe that you're playing as him, or maybe even just like a quick like what do you call it, cutscene,
like
there you go, yeah, like a flashback cutscene between him and the Baron, or no, he's not the Baron, the Count. Yeah, something like that, just to give it a little bit more substance to it, because for me, I don't know, like he did have a like a powerful send off, I think, but I think he probably will be a forgettable character for me at the end of the day.
Well, you know, one thing too is you mentioned like the fake out, or like of him joining your team is kind of like a fake out, but to me that didn't really work so well, because the whole time he is set up as a villain for the first few hours, he's always wearing armor, and I feel like I never saw his face. So when like, and I get this scene where I'm seeing him and they're talking about the stuff that happened, I was like, did I miss something? Like I feel like 100%. I wasn't fully understanding it, and then eventually I clued in on like, okay, I guess he was that guy, but I hadn't really built up that like this villain had these memorable moments because he was like this faceless guy. He was just one of the many guys against me. So that reveal didn't necessarily happen for me. But you know, I think maybe the part that I really did enjoy about his characters, I do feel like the bond that he builds up with these characters is pretty good, particularly Hugo. I like that he takes on this kind of fatherly role, and Hugo looks up to him because he is a fun guy. He's got a cool look to him. He's got this story, and Hugo isn't going to have the context of who he is or what he did wrong. And he also is not the one, like you said, that like almost got killed, even if they were trying to capture him and stuff like this. So I like that element of the character. But yeah, they could have gone a bit further. And I think maybe my one big criticism of this is that when Amicia and Hugo do find him at the end of the game, when he's kind of being almost getting ready to be hung, I guess is what's going to, or decapitation. I forget how they were going to kill him, but they were going to execute him.
It's
in
a
some
hanging.
way. Yeah, there you go. Amicia is still really mad at him, which to me that didn't feel justified, because at this point you've got the reveal that the Count is a major piece of shit, an awful human being. So for the only reason you were mad at Arnaud is because he was trying to kill the Count and kind of screwed you guys over. Well, it didn't even really end up screwing you over, because the Count and the Countess, I guess, took you in. So really, it was just that he caused a scene. To me, that was like the only thing that really showed up as like that was why she was mad at him. And that kind of, I feel like that should have been counteracted when it turns out the Count is an actually horrible human being.
Yeah.
Did that feel weird to you as well?
For me, I took it like she was mad at him because he was about to just use Hugo as a weapon. Like, it's like, hey, now use your rats. And like, that's just taking advantage of a kid, you know? And especially like they had this like kind of back alley like deal that Amicia wasn't aware of. So she had no idea this was going to happen. And in that moment, it's just like, hey, Hugo, do this. And like, at that point of the story, she doesn't want Hugo to really like use the rats or the macula, right?
She's
that
also
changes
later
on.
Headspace at that moment too, right? So that's
absolutely, yeah. But I agree though. I think, you know, let bygones be bygones, because I was almost expecting him to be pissed off at Amicia, because like he just like she just completely left him there. She would have left him there if Hugo wasn't like, hey, we got to save this guy, right? So I don't know. I think when you get to that point, don't really have to, you know, like just come in and be bygones, and just get the fuck off that island. You don't have to be grumpy and grudging towards this character, because there's just so many bigger things at play right now. I don't know. I agree with you.
Yeah. Then moving into talking about the Count and the Countess. I forget what the Count's actual first name is, but Amelie, or is it? It's not Emily. It's Amelie, right? Is the name of the?
It's like Amelia, I think. I'm gonna have to look it up because I completely forget the count's name too.
Whatever it is, I think there's some good. There's a little bit of good and unfortunately a lot of bad for me here. Where I like when we first get into introduced to the town and Amelie, I really like what's going on here. Amelie's a character from Death Stranding. I might be thinking about that is why I'm a little bit confused right now. But I really like that she takes you in, and she's very nice to introducing you. It makes sense because she's set up as a very motherly character. She's a mother not just to her own, well, I guess not her own children, but like she is kind of the mother of this island, so to speak, looking for this child. And I think that like that element all makes sense for me, and I like that we had this someone to trust in this like very uncertain time, and I thought she was going to open a lot more doors for us. But I still felt like the whole time there was this air of mystery to her where something was not quite right, and the more I learned about this island and this is really feels like a cult, right, of going on in this island. So I like that element to it. I think there was that good mystery there. I think Amelie's just a character, one and the same, where you just once again, you don't see her for so long, and then when you finally see her again, it's towards the end of the game, and she kind of has this heel turn where she ends up being not necessarily the bad guy. The Count's definitely the worst of the two, but she's still like she kills Beatrice. I forget.
Yeah, she does. She does. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So to me, like that felt like too far of a turn for who that character was, and I think they could have played better with you revealing the information that the Count was lying about a lot of what's going on here, and that would phase her. But instead, like she just turns into a full-on bad guy and kills your mom in front of you, which feels like, I know things are once again hectic at this moment. There's rats everywhere, but it just didn't work for me, and it made that character fall a bit flat. So I don't know. Do you have any notes on her particularly before? I have a lot more to say on the Count in particular, but I guess that's kind of all I got on her.
So her name is Emily. So it's Emilie. So it's kind of like a French Emily.
Okay, I think the spelling is a bit funky, but Emily, that's easy to remember.
And then Victor is the Count. So that's
Victor. That doesn't even sound familiar to me. I feel like I totally forgot his name.
I just know him as the Count, the bad guy. So yeah, with Emily, I thought she was very mysterious when we first get there. I've seen many times these villains that just have this like very pleasant, warming presence to them, like where they take you in, and then that's when you kind of find out that they are evil. And I was always kind of sus about it because, in these types of games, when you enter a scene like this where you're on a really nice happy place, but you're like, hey, I know something's gonna go wrong. Like they're not just introducing me to these two for no reason. Like we're gonna have something that happens. So I was sus of them, but I thought just the way that it was played, at least in the early stages, it surprised me with how we don't really have any motive. Like you can kind of roam all you want. Like just we'll totally look after you, and like. I think just that I was kind of buying into it, and I was like cult flags going off. Like there's some weird shit going on this island, but like it's not like my characters were kind of blind to that. Like they were kind of like they went in and stayed in their lodgings and all that stuff. But still, like I feel like at least Amicia was a little bit apprehensive. Maybe that's the right word. A little bit slow to go fully.
She does not want to divulge much information to them.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, again, that's a believable thing to do, especially from someone in her situation. Like just these two brand new people on this island, and like you're very just untrusting because of everything that you've gone through. So I think the initial stages were like the highlight of me for the character. I did really like the moment too when you're kind of sneaking around. It's kind of after the ritual, and then you have like the Count and her like going to that pool, and then they're just kind of like they're just kind of like having a ceremonious like moment together and like saying things. And I thought that was kind of interesting to just be like hidden away, but like peering into kind of just those two together. I wish we had more moments like that, because again, like they have this facade that they put on for everyone, and you don't know if it's a facade or not, if it's just like the way that they talk, just being like very like warming and welcoming, being the mother and father, air quotes, of just everyone kind of on this island. And I think along with, because like you said, it is kind of unfortunate that they just kind of disappear for several hours, and when we see them again, she's got like the red paint on. It's just like, I am, she's not like I am the bad guy here, but she's just fully unredeemable, I would say, of when she kills Beatrice, and it's just like, no, yeah, your sister's gonna die now, and I'm just gonna be your mother. So I definitely think there's potential there that unfortunately they just didn't tap for me. I was completely surprised the way that she died. I I figured she was gonna die around that moment, but for her to just get absolutely messed up by the rats, it was like, holy shit, that really happened there. I thought the Count was gonna die before her, but that didn't happen. And I think in that moment it made it. I kind of like the switch that Victor goes through, like with her dying there. I was kind of surprised that he still was wanting to take Hugo as, because I feel like he just did that for Emily, right?
Absolutely. Like, he made up the whole thing.
Yeah, he says he makes up the whole thing for her, and then like I guess he kind of ties it in because he's like the war guy. I'm gonna make him like a weapon and I'm gonna use it. Like I guess that is a little bit more believable, but still, it's just like, I am your father again and kill everyone but the son. It just seemed like not something the character would do. Maybe in that moment, I felt like Hugo was really only for Emily, so that was kind of weird. But for my thoughts on Emily, I think it's someone that we just didn't fully hit the potential of.
Yeah, I think that what you just mentioned there to me was something that was both intriguing but also brought up some confusion, which was when you're going through that sequence near the pool, when you're, I guess, going through the old temple. I forget exactly what they call it in the game. It's been a few weeks now since I played it, but you're figuring out all the information of what happened with the previous, I'll say, couple that were dealing with the macula, which we'll talk about this soon because that is really a lot to talk about here. And you're seeing that there's probably truth to this, or people have gone through it. But then, when you get that reveal later that the cult, I'll say, that's built around it was pretty much completely fabricated by the Count, that's where it's interesting, because that's like a fun twist that he is this deceptive guy. It's a good setup for a villain, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then, to me, there was a lot of confusion. Well, like, okay, well, what actually is real here? Like, what actually did happen then? And what is real about any of these rituals? Is there any truth to it at all? Is it all fabricated? That was maybe a bit unclear to me. And then, it made that moment where he still wants Hugo desperately feel really inauthentic, because to me, that felt like at that point, there's really no reason. Your island's torn apart. Your wife is dead. Why do you still care about this when you're the guy who just like made up this lie and kind of admitted that you don't really believe in it or care about it? It didn't really make any sense to me. So, and I think other than that, outside of pretty much that exact story beat, there wasn't really too much interesting about the character. I felt like otherwise he was pretty much a generic kind of villain. So I think that's where he fell flat to me and doesn't quite reach the heights of the first game's villain, even if that one didn't have a ton of screen time. I still thought he was maybe a bit more of a consistent character, and we can understand what he's going through a bit more, or not where he's going through, but like why he comes to the decisions that he does. So that was maybe part of it too. And one thing that the first game did was have a lot of time jumps. I think we talked about this in our review. This game doesn't really have any of that too, so it's all kind of happening in real time. So I think maybe if there was more time happening in between some of these events, maybe they'd feel more believable. When the whole thing takes place over like a week or two, I think some of these turns don't really make as much sense. And the game had used that as a tool in the first game to make you simmer in things, even if you're not witnessing these moments. But if like months pass when after a certain thing happens, that of course is going to have an effect on the character. So there you go. So you had something on the tip of your tongue there?
I was just going to throw quickly that like I feel like also the whole Child of Embers like mythos, like it's being pushed the second that you step foot on the island, and it's like, okay, that is interesting, but like I feel like it's pretty much confirmed really early on. It's just like, this is just fake. Like this is actually isn't what's happening, and like Hugo and Amicia are like, they just like come to that conclusion, and like they're peering through the curtain of like what's really going on in these rituals, but like even for them it's just like, well, this doesn't really do anything. It's like these poor people are just believing in for nothing. So it doesn't really give a chance for like the player to be like, I can't wait to see the Child of Embers or something like this. And like I feel like because there's just like, oh, that's the carrier and they must have a protector and it's a girl, it's just like, this is so clearly like supposed to be these two characters that are on the island now, which I mean I guess when I got that explanation, I thought maybe that there was a chance that it would be something real, like there is something about the Child of Embers, but it doesn't really go anywhere with that, because it just, our characters are telling me, the player, that nope, this is just fake, and then it's revealed that the Count just, I made the whole thing up, and it just didn't really hit as hard as it could have. Well, maybe I'll leave it there.
That sounds good. Okay, so with that, let's kind of transition then. Let's keep talking about that particular storyline, because I think to me that was from the other perspective of it, from like Amicia and Hugo's side of things. I think that was like one of the strongest parts of the game for me. Was, the first game feels very much like Hugo's story and his development, and Amicia is there to assist him along, and it's the bond between them. But in terms of the actual plot and the lore, it's kind of more on the Hugo side of things, and Amicia is like a tag along. In this game, that almost feels like it's the same thing, but then when you finally get to that part and you're learning about this dynamic between the holder of the macula and, as your nickname, the protector, as the previous iteration called it, the protector, and how important that relationship is, both to have someone who you can trust, someone that will protect them. Like, that to me worked so well. I really liked you kind of seeing these parallels of the story that happened in the past. Maybe they come to conclusions a bit too easily, but for the sake of, this 15-hour game, you're not going to get super nuanced on some of it. But for me, generally, it really, really worked. And yeah, my favorite part about it is that you're playing as Amicia. She's your go-to character in this game. She has maybe more development than Hugo in a lot of ways. And for her finally have this, to feel like she's actually a part of the puzzle of this lore and this process and this cyclical thing that is happened in the past, happens now, and as we see in the post-credits, is going to happen again. Like, I really liked that. I really, really liked that we got the context of how important Amicia is. Obviously, we see that she's saving Hugo. She's helping him do these things, keeping him alive, and maybe the opposite at the end of the game. But man, to go through that whole journey, that macula holder needs someone, whether it is, in this case, a sister. I don't think we actually know what the relationship was. I don't think it was a family member for the past iteration. But that part doesn't really matter. It's just to have that protector, that someone. So I really, really liked that part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, that they didn't specify what the dynamic was there. Because for me, I almost took it maybe it's just my lack of love for this predetermined fate storyline of there's always going to be the brother that has it, and then the sister's going to be the protector. Because for me, it was just really? Okay, every time that you just have a sister that's this particular age and then a son this particular age, that'll probably be the carrier. I don't know, it just seemed a little bit easy, but as you pointed out, we don't really know that. And maybe, I don't know, if they continue this type of Plague Tale story and we do find out what the next carrier would be, it would be interesting if it's a girl that is the carrier, and maybe you have a boy dynamic, or maybe they are maybe it is a girl, whatever it matters, or it doesn't matter, whatever it is. Good observation there, because I was it's kind of easy in that sense, and as you mentioned, it is pretty easy for them to just fill in the cracks in some of these events, she clearly just took out all these people. It's do we know that? We don't know that it was just the one protector that came through and did all this. But for everything tied to I guess the parallels that those two went through, and them discovering that was definitely very fun to go through. And just again walking through the same steps that they did, maybe I don't know how long ago they set a date, but I think it was something 100 years earlier.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Was the Basilius and I forget the girl's name. I just finished it today, but unfortunately I'm already forgetting her name.
A lot of names.
A lot of names. Yeah.
Protector is good.
Exactly. But nonetheless, just them going through oh no, this is where they tied her up here, and this is the observation room where they're kind of doing tests on Basilius, and then they had that really just, I'm gonna say, ominous peeking window upstairs that they could just observe this boy just strapped down. It's very dark and creepy in that sense. So all of that stuff was really cool to go through. And as you mentioned, that's such a big difference from the first game, or from this game to the first game, is that we actually have titles for these type of roles. It's not just oh, this sick kid and I'm his sister, so I'm just gonna take care of him. No, this is actually this is a thing. And the Order, I mean, early on, I think it's Vaudin was the Order alchemist guy who just labeled Amicia oh, you must be the protector because of this. He clearly has knowledge of this dynamic. And then later on in the game, we really get those questions answered, and just the full extent of what the Order kind of does. They find a bunch of maps, and it shows that the Order is kind of worldwide, right? There's some in Egypt and just all over the place. So I think just for the world building aspect of what that is, that was really cool to find out. And just the importance of what Amicia is, because we know she's important. We played through an entire game of her saving Hugo and doing all these things to keep the macula on the DL, on the cool down. Yeah.
And Hugo's side of this story takes quite I'd say doesn't really. There's not a ton going on for him necessarily in that first most section, but then like the last 2 hours, there's like tons of reveals and changes, and particularly when you go deep into that like long cave sequence, which I really like visually. That was so cool. Just the scale of it felt like a dwarven mine, kind of thing.
Yeah.
All this going on. And when he realizes that like deep below all of this, after this super long, like maybe even multiple chapters of going through this, and then you see like the body that was like chained there, and he just like breaks down at the thought of this because he sees so many similarities, whether it's the playroom or right outside of that door, there was like that little side room that had some toys in there, and he's seen his toys and what this other kid was playing with. So he obviously can like be in those shoes. He knows exactly what it's like, and to see like what the fate of this previous person had when he was so hopeful, of course, because both he is a kid, so he's kind of optimistic, but Amicia always, no matter what, always says everything's going to be okay. We're going to make it through. Like she's being positive for him, but we've seen as like part of the story of this is that like her actions have a lot of consequences too on Hugo in particular. I think that's part of it too, where she was really setting it up that like everything went well, like they figured it out, like all this stuff, and then I think that breaks his heart even more so, and then he just totally disconnects at that point, and then he has this turn where he's being in the presence of that, I guess we'll call it the hive, the rat hive, just changed his brain so much and progressed things so much, and then he's obviously changed and different for the rest of the game there. But I think that really worked well, and there's so much build up to that moment too, and you go down this long spire to get down to the bottom. Like I think they made that part of the journey justified in how long that sequence is and how intense it is, and some of those puzzles are pretty tricky. So when you finally get there, like it hits from a story perspective because they made you get there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very well said. I don't think I have anything else to really add on that. That was good.
Sounds good. So a couple other things on Hugo real quick that I wanted to touch on is from a gameplay perspective. I think I feel like they kind of messed up with like choosing how they want the rats to work in this game, right? Because at the end of the first game, you get set up that he can control them in some way, and it's a pretty limited power. You use it a couple times, and these almost like kind of forced sequences. But going into this game, you pretty quickly get broken out into it where you're like be able to control the rats in a lot more, and they have like a meter that builds up if you're using it too much, I guess. And because of that, like I chose to, as much as I could, avoid using the rats, but eventually I started using them some more. I think for me, I think they just like couldn't decide how powerful they wanted to make that ability, where I think that like one of the first sequences is like you're in that farmhouse or something like that, and there's a ton of rats everywhere, but you're able to control like a small section of them, make them move up the stairs, go take those guys out. But then there's other sequences of the game where there's rats everywhere, and it's like, oh, you're not allowed to use rats here, there's too many. So I feel like, well, pick a side. Can I use the rats and pick some or not? Because then there's other sequences at the very end of the game, and I get it, maybe he's more powerful now, where there's rats everywhere, and he is able to control all of them. And so I felt like that was maybe a bit weird. They couldn't quite choose what they wanted to do there. And the other thing too was there's at one point in the game where you're on Lacuna, and so for the first while on Lacuna, you don't see any rats anywhere, and so you're not allowed to use the rat powers. They're like, oh, there's no rats around. Well, like, what's there to control? But then it turns out that there's rats fucking everywhere. So from a gameplay perspective, that doesn't really make sense that they had that there. Maybe it's because like he can sense them in a way, right? So he should have been able to know they were there, and I feel like they never really explained that to me. So yeah, I think they maybe fumbled a bit with some of the rat stuff, but I don't know. Do you have anything to add on there? I don't feel like I don't have a fully realized thought on that. I just something felt off by the end of the experience. I don't know if you're in the same boat as me on that.
Oh, definitely. I definitely noticed it was just like, oh no, you can't use the rats here, but there's no reason why not to. It really seemed just contained to the game was choosing when they wanted me, the player, to be able to utilize that powers. It's such a tough thing though, like going from the end of the first game when it's like, oh, like Hugo can just pop off now, and like this is such a powerful resource. And it's kind of like, even on the first review I was saying, like it is kind of weird going from a game that you have the same powers in the second one, but you can't have them at the beginning. You know, I can't just be throwing flame slings like right from the get go. I gotta relearn that or like reacquire it is probably a better way to say it.
Yeah, and it's not like that particular thing was like a skill tree thing where only some people are gonna get rat powers. Like that is a huge story moment. Everyone's gonna have that same experience with it, so it's built into the foundation of the second game at that point.
Exactly. So I think that's always something tough to tackle, just from like like development side. Like, how can we make this something
so
that
hard
you
to balance
acquire?
that kind of power, right? Like that's crazy power.
I couldn't imagine. He definitely. I mean, he's more powerful than at the end of the first game, because you can just utilize more rats, I guess. But yeah, I agree with your qualm there. I guess I could put it.
The other big part of Amicia's story is that they talk a lot more about her killing a lot more people and how that affects her. And, as I talked about, Sophia is commenting on it. Lucas, we talked about in our review, comments on that too, how they feel that she's a bit cold-blooded at times. It was something that for most of the game, like I feel like the first few hours, they were touching on in a way that I was satisfied with. But then I felt like they kind of just forgot about it once again. But then I got to say, by the end of the game, the last like 2 hours, they really brought it in and harnessed it. Because I think the big thing for me was that, like how it affects her, but also just like by her choosing to do that and how much Hugo trusts her and loves her and looks up to her. That is also a big reason of why he had that kind of turn and fully buying into the macula and using the rats to kill people without caring, because the person he looks up to the most as role model is killing people left, right, and center and does not really seem to care about it and isn't really doing anything to change it. And it just gets, ratcheted up 1,000 times over in this game as you're killing so many people. So I liked it from that. I think maybe one thing that I think they went too far on is at the end of this game when the rats are taking over Lacuna and you're going through those sequences, the guards in Lacuna are not bad guys, right? They're regular people on this like happy island. The Count is a piece of shit. But as far as we know, like all these guards are good people and they're helping you often throughout the game. Where in the first game, all the guards, some of them are maybe you don't necessarily see them do a bad thing, but like the guards in that game are sicking rats on towns, are killing innocent people, are trying to actively kill you the whole game. So even when you have to kill someone, yes, it's Amicia dealing with the fact that she has murdered someone, but like those are bad people, so it's more okay in a way, I guess. But in this game, like all those guards are good people to what we know, or we don't know that they're bad people. So I think that felt weird that you have this like a couple arena sequences where you're just murking tens of them when like I don't know, they're trying to capture you because you're actively going out killing people and letting this rat thing go on. But I just felt like that was maybe a bit too far, where they should have written another way for her to not have to kill all these people, because I think that means like, okay, she is just a cold-blooded killer now. She's a psychopath. And it's like almost irredeemable. I think they went a bit too far on that dial, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was something that she was battling throughout the first game, right? Of just like like, okay, I gotta kill people, but like it's not a good thing, and we have side characters that are pointing that out, whether it's Lucas or whatnot. Like, probably shouldn't be doing that, and it feels like every kind of death in that sense is heavy, even though, like you said, like those guards are a lot worse than the guards in this game, so maybe those are a little bit more justified of just murdering them. But in this one, you have so many more tools to kill people, and you just kill so many more people. Like there's definitely sequences, like particularly the stealth ones, where you can take them out, you can completely avoid them, you can be crafty or whatnot, and it's always nice to have that option. But by the end, like, there's no way I can get through this game without killing anyone. Like in the story purposes, like you just kill, like, I don't even know, like probably 60 plus people, because like you have to, like those sequences, they just force you to do that. And that's something that, as I was playing along through the game, I know it's significantly harder, probably makes like the development cycle like 2 times the length, but to have an option kind of like what Dishonored has, where it's like the way that I play actually affects the story. And who knows, maybe you could have like a really bright ending if you just go through it with the clean hands, as I'll call it, where you just don't kill anyone. And that, for replayability, for so many different reasons, that could just make it so much better. I get it, it's extremely hard, especially when you have a set narrative to do, and like you got to follow it, check all these boxes of the story that they wrote. But in a perfect world, that's probably what I would want them to have, because as I was going through the stealth sequences, it's like, okay, I am popping off right here, but on my next playthrough, I'm going to try and do this with completely stealth and not get caught at all. But unfortunately, by the end of it, I will still be playing the exact same way because I have to. And
a few of those arenas, yeah, you're still killing tens of people.
And because I don't love those arena sequences, it's probably going to be something that I'm not really looking forward to when I get there. It's going to be like, I have to get through this, other than, oh, I can't wait to play that boss scene, which... that's unfortunate. And I think it's another thing too where like because Amicia just was kind of forced a lot of the time to pop off, and there is moments where Hugo is forced to just murder like multiple units. I feel like there is a handful of moments where I completely bought it. It's like there is no other way. Like Hugo has to just murder so many of these people, otherwise they're actually just caught here and bad things will happen. But there is moments in the story that I think they just go a little bit too far, and it's like, come on, like an hour ago this character was just saying how bad it is. Maybe I'll just give the example of like when Amicia says like it's not okay to kill these people even though it's bad people. I do it because I have to, but I'm gonna try and avoid it. But like, please, Hugo, don't do this. And then later on in the story, I get it, Beatrice dies, but like she's just like rooting Hugo on, like, yeah, like keep killing them, like come on. And it just seemed like something Amicia wouldn't be doing. And I don't know, maybe I don't know the character enough. I should, because I just played 2 games with her. But
I think you do, yeah.
yeah, it just seemed a little out of character. And it wasn't like, oh, I can't believe I did that to him. Like, you know, like I basically did what Arnaud like what was trying to get him to do, of just using him as a weapon. But she never really has a moment to like sit with that. It's just, no, it was good that Hugo did that, but there's no consequence to that. And I think that was actually a decent slip up for me, where like story purposes, I really felt like Amicia wouldn't have been doing that, because the whole game she's been saying how bad that is for Hugo. And then by the end of it, like when Beatrice dies, it's like, yeah, now kill now kill Emily, right? Like just pop off on all these different people. And there's a lot of people that Hugo murdered from that point. And I don't know, like even while you're playing as Hugo controlling the rats, there's an emphasis on this bar, where if you go through, like too far on the bar, the macula will just take him. So don't do that. So there's like that incentive, I guess, to stay on the good side, I'll call it.
Right.
But by the end of it, it's just thrown out the window because she just wants to pop off on all these people.
Yeah, it'd have been interesting if that was actually, it was something that she had as well, even if it's like a hidden bar, but just something like that. The more you do it, the more she changes. Because I mean, once again, that could be in there to some extent. I have not replayed the game, but I don't think that's the case. Like maybe you get a couple different dialogue options, but I'm pretty sure the same ending is going to happen, because the ending is so much built around Hugo's kind of goading her on. Like when you're in the weird realm hive thing that he creates, right? And he's kind of like, the macula is like talking directly to Amicia about her actions and stuff like that. And yeah, I like that part of it works for me. I think some of the gameplay there, like when I was in that part with the eagles, and I was very confused on what I was supposed to do. And it's like, you're supposed to kill these rat things, but like maybe you're not supposed to. I thought the game was trying to tell me, oh, don't kill these things, like stop killing these rats that are like forming themselves to look like people, right? You know, that sequence when they're coming in.
Oh yeah.
But I think I liked the sequence where like the very end of it is like when she realizes that she is largely responsible for a lot of this because of her actions.
Yeah.
And she needs to change as a person because she's become not someone that she can be proud of. And you know, that her final decision, the final kill she has to do to like right the wrongs, is to kill Hugo. Like that moment fucking hits. Like that really worked for me as well. And yeah, so I mean, kudos to them there. I think it is something that is sketchy along the way, but like by the end of it, that all those lines that Hugo has were like really hitting home for me and making it feel like, okay, even if I didn't have, like, this is a linear game, you know, it's not giving you those options, but it did come together in. I wish it's just something that they had strung along the way a bit more. And like I said, a lot of these other characters too, right? Or like there's a good start and a good end, but then like you kind of miss the middle. I feel like that was kind of the case for Amicia killing as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said of like how much the ending hits of again tying all these, like actually giving some weight to the fact that she killed all these people. And I don't know, like maybe it's just something moving forward with whatever game like the studio does next. Maybe actually implement that option of like multiple endings, because it just gives so much more replayability. And I could just see how this story could play out if you went through it, you know, killing everyone or not killing anyone, because like Hugo actually makes it out by the end, and like that completely changes the entire story of the game. Because from what the game told me, it seems like that actually would have been the case. Like if Hugo was just really, I mean, he was loved by Amicia. Unfortunately, their situations they came across, they kind of were forced to do some dirty stuff. But I don't know if he just was able to be happy like with his whole family, because when they were on the road, like there was no incidences, there was no macula like spike with him or anything like that. So I think that's something that hopefully they do just implement going forward. Like I said, I understand it makes it a lot harder, but I don't know. They got two awesome games below their belt that I'm aware of. There's probably some other ones in there, but
Microsoft Flight Simulator. Some
oh yeah, right. That's got to be a best-selling game of all time.
I like that part of the story too, where the flawed reason of it, were like, oh, like if we just take him up to the mountains, he'll be so happy there, and he'll, the world will be okay. We just need to get away from it all. When it's like, the reason this is happening is because he's having nightmares where he's not in his conscious mind, and you can't you can't like de-stress him in any way. Like, it's just
good point.
He's not making this choice. But once again, that just goes to show like Amicia is not does not have the full picture, and she can't like zoom out and look at this objective, or I guess like she has a very subjective opinion that is clearly very flawed. Going like I guess I want to talk about like the epilogue and then the post-credit scene, but the last thing we just barely touched on is that Beatrice dies in this game. And to me, it's just like the fact that we talked about this once again, Lucas and her are like absent for most of the game. And she's never really a character that you learn to love. She makes a lot of weird decisions, things that you're never really given the reason for. To me, the death of the father in the first game had more impact than this one. And I think that is like a big knock against the game, because she has way more screen time. She's a way more present character, even if she's absent for a lot of this game. But I think that's something that they really fumbled. It didn't work for me.
Yeah, I agree. Beatrice was, I mean, at the end of the first game, I was like, oh, she's with the crew. I can't wait to see what happens. And unfortunately, she just disappears for the vast majority of the game. And probably beside from the main crew, my favorite side character was definitely Lucas. And again, he just disappears just because we're going to be with Sophia now, and we're just going to have her with us. And then they just come in at the end. Like, it was just, okay, they're back here, and what's going to happen with them? Absolutely nothing. Like, Lucas does survive, but then by the end of this game, he's just on his own. And then Beatrice, she just didn't really have much substance, even like when she was on screen, because like for the first, I mean, actually in this game, like she's really kind of against what Amicia wants to do. She's completely for the order. Like, we're gonna take Hugo to this place. This is exactly what we're gonna do. But when they go against that, like, that's a big thing. Like, Amicia and Hugo just went off on their own, and then when they see each other, it's like, holy shit, this is gonna be a big moment. But she's like, are you okay? Yep, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh no, like, this is completely wrong. Like, this isn't the case. Like, they actually had him. The order was wrong. And she's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then the next time we see her, she's chained up. And then like 5 minutes later, she gets just her throat slit. And it's just like, really? That's the best we could do with this character that we already have some good substance from the first game about her. Like, we kind of know what her personality is like. That's very interesting. She's a very powerful alchemist. Like, they don't even touch upon any of that in this game, other than just having Lucas as her apprentice. So definitely a big slip up, I think, of just not, I mean, with Lucas even, just not utilizing those characters from the first game, because it just seemed like they had a different story that they wanted to tell and wanted to bring in new characters, which isn't a bad thing, but just don't abandon those first ones that we built upon. And I know I'm not alone of like really loving like the character of Lucas, or even Beatrice was really interesting from the first game.
Yeah, that's something where, man, I would have loved to have a chapter or two with Beatrice and Lucas and like see what they're doing.
That'd been cool.
Not like I don't necessarily need every like beat of how they got a boat and made it to the land and found out where they were. Like, I don't need the play by play, but just a couple scenes. I'd love to hear more of Beatrice's thought process and the decision she's making. Of, she knows that if they go to this other town on the mainland, like what possibly could go wrong. Like, I'd love to hear why she still wanted to do that and hear more justification, and maybe like some emotional moments from her of her being sad and worried about her kids who just fucking ran away, and maybe some reflection on her part of the fact that they ditched her like willingly because of her actions and her inability to understand what they needed. So I don't know, something like that could have worked, but I understand that's a lot of development time when you're adding in more playable characters and you have to actually think about that stuff, whereas there's never really an answer of what exactly they're doing because there's nothing interesting. They just eventually found a boat and made it to where they are. So something I would have liked to see, but I understand why they didn't do it. Getting into the end of the game here, where, of course, Hugo, Beatrice is gone. Arnaud is not around anymore. The Count, everyone's dead. Everyone's gone, except for Sophia, who still is around, and Lucas, who is just off doing his alchemist thing, is what we know. We don't see him in this kind of epilogue sequence. We see Sophia, though, and Amicia is in the mountains. I really like the look of this. It's just beautiful. These kind of, it's more almost like a Canadian forest sort of thing.
Totally, yeah.
And you go to the kind of gravesite memorial, I'll say, for the family. So I like that sequence as well. And she's getting ready to make the journey to prepare for the next cycle, right? Because she knows that this is going to happen again. And she, unlike the previous protector and what was his name? Basilius,
I think it was.
Yeah, unlike them where they had information, but it was kind of confusing and unclear, and they were kind of deciphering it. She wants to get ready for that next cycle in whatever way that means, like whether that's making it easy for them to find out about this.
She's going to kill the carrier.
Yeah, or like making a Wikipedia page. Who knows what she's going to do? But she's going to do something so that they can know what to do, which I guess is just like, hey, Protector, you have to kill this kid, and that's going to suck, but you got to do it. So that's kind of the setup for the sequel, I guess, but then the post-credits throws things out of whack, where it's just a very quick scene where you see a baby who clearly has the macula, and you hear a ventilator, which makes you think we're probably in a modern-ish hospital, and you hear possibly heels or just shoes walking on like a tiled floor. So clearly we are in the future to some extent, probably the next cycle, which would be 100 or 200 years from now. I don't know if that'd be like the 1900s, the 2000s, modern day, whatever it is, that's kind of being set up here. So I don't know. Do you think they're eyeballing a sequel where you play as Amicia and you're going through this thing of setting up the cycle and inevitably something bad happens? Do you think the sequel, if they are going to make one, would be like a modern day game and you're going through the events of seeing what Amicia did to give you this information, and like you're essentially in a way going through what Amicia's journey was to set up, preparing for the next cycle? What do you think they're doing here? I was blown away when I saw that post-credit scene. I did not expect that at all.
I did not expect that at all, and I thought I was like hearing things. I'm like, there's no way that's a ventilator, right? And it's just like, holy shit, no, yeah, we're actually doing like a major skip there at a hint is. Maybe it's just a fun little like thing at the end of the game that maybe they're just done with this type of story. But I mean, they set it up really well, and I think if they do a sequel to this story, I think Amicia would be gone. I think it would be similar that if our future characters are trying to figure it out, like we'll definitely hear of the story of Amicia, and like especially because she. Like she has a purpose. She's going to be setting up some sort of guide, Wikipedia page, whatever it might be, to explain the situation. And I think that she probably succeeded, and like we will find her and like the legacy of her. And again, I just think in the future, if we are playing that, getting to that moment would be really cool. Just seeing the memorial to Amicia or something, and it would just it'd be a great tie back. But like you said, like I was blown away by that little reveal, and just. It like took me a while because I was like, "There's no way that is the case. This is such a time like era constricted event, but it's totally not. There's no reason why this can't be happening in the future, and just how powerless even future technology could be to the Justinian plague, right? So, fantastic ending sequence. Everything leading up to it too. You get Amicia with a new haircut, which is such a sweet look for her. That looked awesome, and again, just showcasing what they can do on like building a scenery and have it so different from the other places that we were at. Just it looked gorgeous. It looked so fantastic. I just wanted to get lost in this little area, but that was the end of the game, unfortunately. But it was beautiful. I love the eagles too, like when she's approaching the what would you call it? Yeah, like the
memorial statue,
memorial thing.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Like they could do something where you're playing as the modern day character, whatever that ends up being, and you get to a certain area, a certain section. Let's say it's like a tomb or something, and for some reason Amicia was in there leaving some clues. Then you could like go to her perspective of when she was there and play through that sequence.
100%.
That could be a way of doing it as well. That would be fun. So I'm really curious. I mean, I don't know what the sales were like for this game. I know it was a day one on Game Pass, so I'm sure it had a lot of players, but I don't know how much money it's going to make necessarily, and I don't expect there to be a DLC for this game. The first game didn't have anything like that, but I think if they're going to do I guess that could be Amicia's like story here. If they want to do that, where you see what she did to prepare the next cycle, that could actually be like a good DLC length kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd expect that though, but I'm really curious to see if we do get a trilogy here, a third game, what they end up doing. When people see the trailers, they're gonna be like, "What the hell? I don't remember the game looking like this. I don't remember it being modern day." So I guess that might spoil some things or whatnot. But I think that'd be intriguing. But I'm excited. I'm definitely gonna be there, even if I had my qualms with this game. I still very much enjoyed my time with it. I think there was some amazing moments, even if there was a lot of mediocre stuff or even some bad stuff along the way. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that we did not cover in the notes? And you've beaten this now, so do you want to drop a number rating on it, or any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'll definitely drop a rating. I have a couple notes just to shout out here. When the count is like when our crew escapes the island, there's this little like false hope of like we made it out. Like this is an awesome moment, and because we didn't have a conclusion with the count yet, it's like I know he's gonna pop up somewhere. Like we're not out of the woods yet by any means, but when they're approaching and the ship's like approaching, and then it's like this big, again, it's kind of like an arena scene where you're just like popping off guys with your slingshot, and I just couldn't help but being like, just fucking aim for the sails. Like you're just gonna burn their ship. Like they're like trying to like speed up and get away from these guys that are about to ram your ship, and like you're shooting slings, and when I pulled out my sling, it was like already on the ignifier thing, and I'm like, why can't I not just shoot the sails here? Like this is just, it just doesn't make sense. It's similar to our nods like shield flame thing. Like it just, okay, they're just limiting me here for story purposes, but it was just something that was just so hard to like look past.
I didn't think about that, but that is smart.
I was like upset. I was like, really? Like I can't just throw like a pot with ignifier on there and just blow up like the ship? Like come on. But again, it was a minor thing that went a long way for me.
Actually, I want to throw a quick thing in there, which is that you mentioned Sophia's prism ability, which is it's all right, it's fine, adds some new puzzle dynamic. But I really like when the first sequence when you're on the boat and you get to explore, you're supposed to talk to every character and then you can progress. But you can also do bonus things where you go to the different areas of the ship and look at something, and then Amicia will have some line. I like when I went in the main area, there's like Sophia's jewelry box was there, and in it was that present. I was like, that thing looks really cool. I wonder what that is. So when that came back, I was like, oh, I remember that thing. I remember thinking that thing looked really beautiful, and I wondered what it would be. So that was a fun moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a cool tool. I was expecting her to throw it to you at one point, being like, take this. This will be useful. But she held on to it. And did the first game have like a catching mechanic or a throwing mechanic where it's like let me use that? I can't remember. Yeah.
I'm gonna say no. I don't think so.
It was satisfying for me, honestly. Just like it's like aiming at the hand and just like using some teamwork there. It was a fun addition. It's pretty minor, but I thought it was cool at least. And then the other note I had, this scene, it actually really hit me. It actually kind of made me choke up, actually. And it wasn't just like the Hugo death. It was when Amicia, they're in like that crypt and they're following like the steps of the protector. And then when Amicia like finds like the protector dead, and she's just like, it just hits her so hard of like she failed to like protect him, and she died alone, and she's just like really torn up about it because again she's seeing what could possibly be her fate, and then especially when they get to Basilius and see what happened to him, and then like picturing Hugo in that situation, it was a really emotional, heavy moment, and the character just like going through it, and like again me on the joysticks, just it was like, oh my god, like this is so heavy, like I can't believe that she actually, after all of her effort, all the people that she took out, it wasn't enough, and she just died alone on this floor. Like it was just really, really tragic. And like I didn't even see the scene. It was just them finding this skeleton because it's been so long, all decayed. But it was just such a, again, I didn't really shout out the score or like the music, but like, it just lifted those scenes, and it just got my tear ducts going a little bit. So and I mean that's a reoccurring thing throughout the first game. I had tears too. Like they're just so good at setting that immersion and setting the narrative and just making me really attached to the characters and what they're going through. So huge credit to them being able to pull those emotions from me, because that doesn't always happen. There's a lot of times when you'll see a character die in a game. It's just like, okay, yeah, he was with me the whole game, but unfortunately he's gone here. But this game really like makes me sad when someone dies. Not Beatrice, because she was just fucking disappeared this entire game. But yeah, no, that was a big moment for me that actually hit me, and I really wasn't expecting it. It got me off guard big time.
Yeah, good call out. You want to throw that number on it? Anything like
that? Oh,
yeah.
I can't remember what I gave the first one. Probably like a 9 out of 10 or something. But for this one,
sounds about right, yeah.
I think I'll give it. I think I'll go 8.5. Not quite at the 9 range, but still higher than 8, just because. Like the quality of it, like this is just such a gorgeous game, and all the different areas we went through is just so fantastic. But unfortunately for me, I didn't love like that super angry turn that Amicia had of like just pushing Hugo on to kill people. It just seemed really unauthentic, or like what should have been the case. And the side characters, just they could have done so much more with them, unfortunately. And very generic boss fight was big letdown. The first game wasn't anything like too crazy of like an end game boss fight, but it was significantly better than what this one was, of just like the quick time events.
It was pretty crazy when the guy's like summoning towers of rats and throwing them at you and stuff like that.
Fair enough. I think it's just like the staged fight thing. It's like I've done this in a video game before, where it's like I do this 3 times and then it'll be like this next
classic
part.
3 times away.
Yeah. So like for that situation, yes, it's a little formulaic, but as you mentioned, like it is absolutely insane what's going on. And significantly better than just being like, well, I gotta hit X at this right time, otherwise I'm gonna have to redo this because I failed the fight there. And I guess I should credit. I did like when the switch happens and the Count like attacks Amicia, and then you're like running away from him. That was kind of fun. It was a little bit different. Of you're just so vulnerable, your shoulder's completely dislocated, and all you can do is run around. But he can still hear you, so you got to be kind of quiet. It almost seemed like a horror game fight scene, because usually
it was scary when he's like right on your heels. I found my heart rate increasing. Like it was very stressful when he's following you and you are intentionally very slow and you're just like barely getting under the table and just creaking through the bookcases.
It's pretty long too for like a sequence of like that. Like you have to go pretty far, and you go to some different areas, and then when you go to like the kitchen, and like the housekeepers just completely rat you out like instantly. It was because I think it's just because you feel so vulnerable. It felt a lot more intense, whereas later on, you hit X, hit square a couple times, and and Bob's your uncle there. But yeah, no, fantastic game. I can't wait to see what the studio does next.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on this. This was a lot of fun to dig into this game a lot more. And yeah, we'll be back later this week. You and Taylor will, for a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 review. And next week's Sidequest will be that review for God of War Ragnarok. So we're in review season. The good times are here. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you again next week. See ya.
Bye-bye.